Chapter 825. However, even though he knew that Wuming was an extremely powerful dragon species, Maxwell's expression began to distort as if he had gone berserk. Then go to hell. Maxwell roared crazily and placed his hands on both sides of his body as if he was summoning something. In an instant, ice and fire emerged from both sides of Wuming, forming a spiral of ice and fire that rushed madly towards Wuming. It was unknown whether Maxwell didn't care about Vera's safety at all, or whether he knew that Vera wouldn't be hurt by this move, but Maxwell's move completely included Vera in his attack range. If it was the former, then good. Maxwell was a complete scumbag. If it was the latter, it would be even better. Because if it couldn't hurt Vera, it naturally couldn't hurt Wuming. However, Wuming wouldn't just stand there and let his opponent attack him. Even if Maxwell's attack couldn't hurt Vera, he couldn't let Maxwell be so arrogant. Maxwell looked at them with a crooked clown smile, but the boy and girl beside Maxwell didn't react at all. If he couldn't even block such an attack, then he wasn't qualified to be their opponent at all. This was indeed the case. Swish, the smoke and explosion were separated by an unknown object, dispersing to both sides, revealing Wuming and Vera in the middle. At this moment, Wuming was holding a sword that shone like gold and contained a sacred and ancient aura. There was no doubt that it was this sword that had blocked Maxwell's icy flames and slashed them apart. "It's a godhead weapon," the young man said calmly. According to the information gathered, the most important thing to pay attention to was that the other party's spirit of incantation had been bestowed with a powerful ability. This ability was extremely powerful, and it had once instantly destroyed Maxwell. He had never heard of the other party using a godhead armament. However, the girl standing beside the boy didn't find it strange. "It's not strange for him to have one or two godhead equipment, Your Highness." The girl still remembered clearly how Wuming had played her in the palm of his hand. She also remembered how Wuming had beaten up Maxwell. She was not surprised that such an expert would have a god deity equipment. "You're right. I was careless, Ling," the young man called His Highness smiled. "Vera, leave for a while." Wuming patted Vera's little head, and then opened the teleportation portal, indicating for Vera to enter. "You're not allowed to touch her." With a teleport, the gloomy Maxwell instantly appeared in front of Wuming. However, Shing, Wuming slashed at Maxwell who was in front of him. What? Maxwell, who couldn't react in time, was instantly split into two. The auras of the girl named Her Highness and the girl named Ling also became serious. Godhead armaments were also divided into grades. They didn't pay much attention to the godhead equipment in Wuming's hand that they had never seen before. It was the same for Maxwell, but who would have thought that Maxwell would be cut into two pieces like a hot knife cutting through butter? Maxwell, who was split into two, turned into blue particles and dissipated. However, a few seconds later, a new Maxwell appeared beside Her Highness and Ling. Damn it. Maxwell gritted his teeth, and his face began to twist. One had to know that Maxwell was a 4-digit demon lord. If it was an ordinary godhead equipment, it definitely wouldn't be able to break through Maxwell's defense. That's not an ordinary godhead equipment, Her Highness judged. Although godhead equipment was a general term, there were also differences in strength. In the understanding of the Xingyue world, they were treasures, and treasures were also divided into grades. For example, the leader of Perseus, Luos, had the scythe, helmet, and boots that were passed down by Perseus. These were all godhead equipment, just that their grades were relatively low. No, it couldn't be said like that. It should be said that compared to Gungnir, the main god's godhead equipment, their power wasn't strong. As for high-level godhead weapons, the Gungnir that was mentioned earlier was one of them, and Silent Cry had a typical example, such as the Black Rabbit's Vidra replica. Although Black Rabbit's Vidra replica was a replica of the genuine Vidra scepter possessed by Sakura and its power couldn't be compared, because it was bestowed by Sakura, the replica's power was also quite strong. And Wuming's Blade of Salvation wasn't weaker than Gungnir and Vidra replica. It even had a higher grade weapon that surpassed these godhead equipment. Why? Because the Blade of Salvation wasn't just a weapon. Its true ability was to store other godhead equipment. Just when Maxwell, His Highness, and Belle were surprised, Wu Ming looked at Vera again. Vera, listen to me, leave here first, I'll pick you up later. Wu Ming said to Vera gently as if he was talking to a child. Villo, are you okay? Vera rarely spoke. Vera knew how difficult it was to deal with Maxwell. Plus, he had 2 companions, so Vera was inevitably worried that Wu Ming wouldn't be able to defeat him. However, Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Who do you think I am, Vera? They can't hurt me. Vera nodded silently and hurriedly walked in, as if she didn't want to stay in the same place as Maxwell. No. My bride. Maxwell watched Vera walk into the portal with a heart-wrenching expression. If he didn't know, he would have thought that Vera was led astray by Wu Ming. Closing the portal, Wu Ming turned his head to look at Maxwell and the others, and stretched his neck a little. Let me show you the true power of the Blade of Salvation. With that, Wu Ming gently threw the Blade of Salvation behind him. As if it merged into an unknown space, a ripple appeared behind Wu Ming. The moment the ripple appeared, Maxwell felt danger. In an instant, Maxwell had the idea that he must stop Wu Ming. He could indeed resurrect, or rather, ordinary attacks couldn't kill him, but this didn't mean that he didn't feel pain. The pain caused by the attack was still there. The boy named His Highness and the girl named Belle also felt danger, but because Wu Ming's main target was Maxwell, the 2 weren't as nervous as Maxwell. After all, it was Maxwell who provoked Wu Ming. The 2 of them didn't do anything. Indeed, Wu Ming didn't intend to attack His Highness and Belle. His main target was Maxwell. But as for whether Wu Ming would be affected by the wide range of damage caused by Maxwell's attack, that wasn't Wu Ming's concern. Buzz, electric lines emerged from the ripples on Wu Ming's back and formed one square lattice after another. The square lattices were arranged in a rather orderly manner. His Highness couldn't help but widen his eyes at this scene. Manchala Square. At that moment, weapons emerged from every square lattice. There were swords, single-edged sabers, broadswords, spears, stone pestles, spears, halberds, and other weapons. Not only that, but all of them were aimed at Maxwell's position. These weapons carried an ancient, mysterious, and powerful aura. When such an aura appeared on the weapons, it meant that all of them are godhead armaments. Maxwell suddenly felt a sense of crisis when he saw this scene. However, in the next second, these weapons shot toward Maxwell like bullets from a loaded gun. Chapter 826. The countless weapons in the lattice behind Silent Cry's back were like hidden dragons that had left the abyss. In other people's eyes, they rushed through the air and shot towards Maxwell in a manner that was incomparably boundless. One after another, the weapons from the gods completely covered Maxwell's position. The impact of the weapons caused explosions one after another. The ground was covered with smoke and dust from the explosions, and it was impossible to see what was going on inside. After a while, Wu Ming, who used his mental power to detect, found that Maxwell was no longer within the range of the energy torrent. Then, Wu Ming raised his arm, and the Manchala formation stopped shooting weapons. Without the sound of these weapons being shot and exploding, the scene fell into silence. Not far away, Ling supported Her Highness as she watched this brutal scene with a face full of fear. Although Wu Ming's weapons were aimed at Maxwell, they were so powerful that even Her Highness and Ling were affected. She had no choice but to use her ability to teleport Her Highness not far away. Your Highness. Ling could not help but gulp as she spoke with a trembling voice. Ah, I know, Ling. This scene is too shocking for both you and me. Hundreds of thousands of Godspark weapons with an ancient aura were fired at the same time. This was naturally very shocking for Ling. Even the gods and god kings' God's Park weapons could not compare to Wu Ming's. However, when she thought of his true identity, Ling understood. However, Her Highness was as shocked as Ling. As someone who had guessed Wu Ming's true identity, she was shocked by the Manchala formation that appeared behind Wu Ming. I didn't expect him to have the Manchala formation. Her Highness could not help but frown. Although it was different from the Manchala formation she knew, it was indeed the Manchala formation. After all, Her Highness and the Manchala formation were of the same origin. Then, Her Highness' face hidden under the cloak smiled. As expected, it was right to meet you today, mysterious dragon. However, due to the distance, Wu Ming naturally couldn't hear His Highness' words, and the person Wu Ming was paying attention to was Maxwell. When the smoke dissipated, the exposed ground was riddled with holes. The traces of the explosion were quite obvious. Indeed, just as he had sensed with his spiritual power, Maxwell had disappeared without a trace. He didn't lose his mind because of anger. Wu Ming was not surprised by Maxwell's choice, or rather, it was not surprising to anyone. The Divine Blade of Salvation was a storage box that contained almost all the weapons used by the gods. Whether it was a reward for the last king for defeating the God Slayer or a reward for helping the last king defeat the God Slayer, in short, the last king had been bestowed with various weapons by the gods over the years. According to what Shuiyu said, the Divine Blade of Salvation was a treasure trove that contained almost all of the treasures, and the treasures stored within were all genuine. This meant that not only could the Sword of Salvation project these weapons, it could also be used by Wu Ming. Maxwell had obviously sensed that these Godhead weapons were genuine, which was why he had run away after being killed. What a joke. It was obvious that he couldn't beat the other party, so why would he want to be tortured? It was better to run away first. As for His Highness and Ling, Wu Ming did not attack them, so who would care about them? After Wu Ming finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the Manchala square behind him disappeared one by one. Finally, it turned into a shining longsword that floated behind Wu Ming. It was the Divine Blade of Salvation. Then, Wu Ming looked at His Highness and Ling, who were not far away. I thought the two of you had run away too. I didn't expect you to still be here. With a grab, Wu Ming grabbed the Divine Blade of Salvation and aimed it at His Highness and Ling. It seems that I can catch the key person today. Ling, on the other hand, acted as if she was facing a formidable enemy. She stood in front of His Highness and looked like she would immediately escape with His Highness if the situation was not right. However, His Highness did not panic at all. It was unknown if he was pretending to be calm or if he was really confident. Sir Villo, I'll call you that for now. His Highness spoke. However, His Highness's words left Wu Ming scratching his head. What did this respectful tone mean? Also, what did he mean by, for now? Did he know his true identity, or was there another Villo Silenced in the box garden world? But after thinking about it, Wu Ming understood. As expected, you've seen our true form. That's right, the truth was that His Highness had seen his true form. The evidence was what Maxwell said to Wu Ming when he first met Wu Ming. Even if you're only a soul now, you're not something that an existence like me can offend. Until next time, powerful dragon species. Without a doubt, the other party knew his identity. There was a high possibility that the other party had seen his true form. And His Highness, as Maxwell's companion on the surface and a key figure called Your Highness, it was impossible for him not to know. Hearing Wu Ming's words, His Highness could not help but clap his hands. As expected of you. But, I've never seen your true form, I've only felt your presence. As if recalling a memory, His Highness raised a hand. Just the presence alone is unforgettable. How powerful is that? Powerful enough to free me from the control of others, enough to stop me from being a pawn. Your Highness. Ling looked at His Highness in confusion. Logically speaking, this should be their secret, why did he reveal it so easily? Pressing on Ling's shoulder to signal Ling to calm down, His Highness then extended a hand to Wu Ming. Do you want to work with us? The scene fell into silence once again. Ling was stunned by His Highness' invitation to Wu Ming. His Highness maintained his extended hand, waiting for Wu Ming's answer. Wu Ming, on the other hand, didn't know what to say. He even smiled. Why do you think I'll agree? Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. Because there is no conflict between us. Last time, when Ling and Gulao attacked you, it was because they thought you were a member of Perseus. As for that guy Maxwell, you can see that he isn't actually on the same side as us. He was actually sent by the higher-ups to monitor me. His Highness was very sincere, and simply said some of the things that could be considered secrets. There's no conflict, and we have the same benefits. Under such circumstances, isn't working together the best choice? Indeed, not to mention that there was no conflict, even if there was, so what? There was a saying that there were no eternal friends, only eternal benefits. But some things were just so coincidental. Compared to benefits, Wu Ming preferred friends. Unfortunately, I choose to decline. Chapter 827. What, don't you want to find your original body? Withdrawing his outstretched hand, His Highness walked toward Wu Ming step by step. I help you find your original body, and you use your power to help me get rid of my identity as a pawn. Isn't it the best of both worlds? Indeed, this is indeed a way to get the best of both worlds. Wu Ming shrugged and admitted generously. But, I won't cooperate with people who use codenames every day. In this regard, His Highness smiled and then took off the hood of his cloak, revealing a rather young face of a white-haired boy. Your Highness, what are you doing? Ling was shocked. My name is Galji. Your Highness. Ling was really panicked this time. His Highness even said his real name. His Highness, or Galji. The reason why he has always used His Highness as a name is because the name Galji is too special. How special is it? At least, Wu Ming knew the origin of the other party as soon as he heard it. The 10th incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu. Vishnu, one of the three main gods of Hinduism, the god of protection, is said to have more than 10 incarnations to save the world, but the most famous and recognized one is the 10 incarnations of Vishnu. And Galji is the 10th incarnation of Vishnu, the boy who appeared in the end of the world to save the world and rebuild the perfect era. Wu Ming never thought that Vishnu would be among the people who attacked the entire box. With such a special identity, it is difficult to guarantee that there is a Hindu mythological force behind Galji. But in this way, Wu Ming realized a problem. Did his original body also fall into the hands of the other party? If that is the case, it will be troublesome. How about it? I have enough sincerity, don't you want to think about it? Galji once again proposed to Wu Ming. Indeed, just the exposure of the name Galji made Wu Ming think a lot, which is already very sincere. It's hard to imagine that as the 10th incarnation of the god of protection, Vishnu, you could actually attack Hakata. Wu Ming sighed. The north, south, east, west, and north districts were attacked by Absolute Evil's doppelganger. The south district's ruler, Avalon, was attacked as well as Pest's attack on the fire dragon's birth ceremony. Galji and the others were probably behind all of this. This included the fact that Salamandra's headquarters had been attacked. However, if you are a chess piece, it makes sense. Wu Ming looked at the capital of Brilliant Flames. At this moment, the city of Raging Flames was still being attacked by the giants. As the reinforcements had yet to arrive, Salamandra seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. If Wu Ming continued to chat with Galji, perhaps the entire Salamandra would follow in the footsteps of Avalon. Wu Ming stretched out a hand and began to chant. My contract, my kin, I am the place where the tributaries converge. Make a pact with me. Heed my call, obey my command. Appear, Wu Ming's sudden chant startled Ling. After using his ability to hastily teleport to Galji, who had taken a few steps forward, Ling was ready to teleport Galji away immediately. However, Galji once again pressed on Ling's shoulder, indicating that Ling did not need to panic. "Don't worry, Ling. He won't suddenly attack me." Although this was the first time he and Wu Ming met, through the information collected in the past, Galji understood that Wu Ming was not the kind of person who would sneak up on a face-to-face conversation. Wu Ming was a powerhouse, and powerhouses did not need to do so. The truth was indeed as Galji said. Wu Ming would indeed not suddenly attack. The reason why Wu Ming chanted the chant was actually to deal with the enemies in the capital of Brilliant Flames. After Wu Ming finished chanting, a light appeared from Wu Ming's body. The light condensed and gradually solidified, finally forming a human figure. The light gradually dissipated, revealing a person who looked exactly like Wu Ming. This startled Ling, and His Royal Highness's eyes also became serious. Because not only did the other party look exactly the same as Wu Ming, but even the aura was exactly the same as Wu Ming's. It was very likely that the other party's strength was exactly the same as Wu Ming's. Indeed, the main function of the clone was to conclude contracts and summon kin, but the most important thing was that it could duplicate the original body. If multiple clones were duplicated, then each clone would have a fraction of the original body's strength. But if only one clone was duplicated, then the clone would have 100% of the original body's strength, which was equivalent to doubling. Of course, that was only duplicating one's own strength. For a unique weapon like the Blade of Salvation, the clone could not duplicate it. Wu Ming threw the Divine Blade of Salvation to his doppelganger. The doppelganger caught the Divine Blade of Salvation. After nodding his head, the doppelganger bent his legs and jumped up, flying towards the direction of Glorious Flame City. Then, Wu Ming looked at Galji again. "Speaking of which, we are somewhat similar. I also have a clone, and there are 12 of them. The ability just now was the effect of my 8th clone. You also have a clone." Galji was stunned. Having the same clone as Vishnu and the Manchala phalanx, Galji began to suspect whether Wu Ming was a dragon god in India. Although he was the 10th clone of Vishnu, he was only born less than 3 years ago, and the knowledge in his mind was only general knowledge that was instilled. It could be said that apart from having the title of Vishnu's 10th clone, he was completely unrelated to Vishnu, a newborn less than 3 years old. However, while Galji was guessing, Wu Ming explained. "That's the authority I obtained by killing gods in other worlds. The Blade of Salvation is the same." "Is that so?" However, Galji's expression was somewhat unpleasant. The other party obviously wanted to use this information to offset the information he had given. To put it simply, Wu Ming still chose to refuse to cooperate. "I think my sincerity is enough. Do you have to be my enemy?" Everything Galji had done all this time was to get rid of the upper echelon's control, so that he and his subordinates could get rid of the status of chess pieces. If Wu Ming found his original body, Galji was confident that Wu Ming's power could help him achieve all this. However, Galji did not lack Wu Ming's power. Wu Ming's power was just a shortcut, and it did not matter even if he did not have it. If Wu Ming insisted on being an enemy, then Galji would definitely not be soft-hearted. For freedom, Galji was willing to attack the entire box court, let alone a ghost without a body. However, Wu Ming scoffed at this. "What, you're changing to coercion now?" "I still say the same thing, I refuse." There might be a chance to be gentle with Wu Ming, but if he were to be forceful with Wu Ming, there would be no chance at all. "No, how can that be? This is not coercion." His Highness, who had a bad expression, suddenly smiled. "If I remember correctly, no name should only be the box court knight now." Chapter 828. The Paladin Galji was referring to Letitia. "What do you mean?" Wu Ming raised his eyebrows. "If you insist on being my enemy, then I have no choice but to strike first." Galji shrugged helplessly. Actually, other than the Western District, which is a feint, the Eastern, Southern, and Northern districts are all our targets. Galji's words shocked Wu Ming. Could it be that the Eastern District was also attacked by you? Galji revealed a natural smile. Not long after Silent Wonder left the East District, his companions went to attack the East District, or rather, they attacked No Name. And this was what Galji believed to be coercion. Boom! The sound of the ground breaking resounded. Wu Ming rushed towards Galji and unleashed a heavy punch. Boom! Galji's crossed arms blocked Wu Ming's fist, producing a muffled sound that shook the atmosphere. Your Highness. Belle was shocked. Just as she was about to use grace to go to His Highness' side, Wu Ming suddenly looked at her. Swish! Visible magical powers emanated from Wu Ming's body, instantly enveloping Ling and Galji. Galji himself wasn't affected by the suppressive version of magic, so he was immune to it, but Ling wasn't. Just like when Pest was summoned, Ling's face was pale and his body was stiff. At this moment, his mind was blank and he couldn't even use his grace. He even sat on the ground. Ring! Galji couldn't help but worry. Do you still have the time to worry about others? Wu Ming increased his strength again, and Galji's legs began to bend. As expected of a dragon. Not only is his strength vaguely superior to Elder Ge's in his soul state, but even the pressure of his mana is so terrifying. Galji frowned slightly. He had to admit that he had underestimated the spirit in front of him. Wu Ming maintained his posture of punching Galji's arms. He stuck his head out slightly and looked at Galji. I came prepared this time when I returned to the paladin. Although Wu Ming was now a servant, which was also a spirit, the summoning spell that Letitia used when they returned to the paladin was modified by Wu Ming. As a result, all of Wu Ming's attributes were close to his original body. Wu Ming's original body had been in the origin for so long that he had been strengthened to a certain extent. It could be said that it was a piece of cake for him to receive a holy sword head-on without any damage. Even Gilgamesh's, which was the most powerful treasure artifact, could only scratch the scales of his original body. But even so, Wu Ming's origin dragon hadn't reached adulthood yet, and was only between infancy and adulthood. It was hard to imagine what kind of a being to be an adult dragon origin. If Wu Ming's original body continued to be baptized in the origin, it would not take long before Wu Ming's original body would enter adulthood. However, Wu Ming did not have the time to wait any longer because Gidea's anthropoid burn threatened Gadotzi's world. Therefore, Wu Ming chose to face Gidea directly. It could be said that if Gidea did not have the black mud that came from the same source as Wu Ming, he would not be a match for Wu Ming at all. Even with part of the black mud, Gidea would still lose to Wu Ming in the end. It was because of this that Wu Ming did not hesitate to cause trouble for Gidea. Gidea understood this as well, which was why he chose to attract almost all of the black mud between the worlds and detonate it to severely injure Wu Ming. It was also because of this that Wu Ming's original body fell into the box world and was nowhere to be found. As for finding his original body in an unknown world, Wu Ming needed to continue cheating. When he returned to the box, Wu Ming had a rough idea of how difficult his enemy would be to deal with, be it in terms of strength, durability, or agility. As the master of cheating, Wu Ming adjusted the servant's spirit base to the limit of a servant. It could be understood that Wu Ming's casual punch just now was equivalent to the full-strength blow of someone with 5-digit strength. However, the fact that Galji could withstand the punch proved that he was not to be underestimated. Although Wu Ming's punch was a 5-digit attack, it did not mean that his opponent's 100-point physical defense could withstand his 100-point physical attack. Other external factors had to be considered. Therefore, the number of Galji who could withstand Wu Ming's punch was definitely not in the 5 digits. At the very least, it had to be in the 4 digits. Try this. After Wu Ming finished speaking, his red pupils turned golden. I am the strongest, and I hold all the victory in my hands. No matter if it is a human or a demon, I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. The sacred words came out from Wuming's mouth. Whether it was Galji or Ling, both of their faces changed. Galji felt a huge force coming from his arms. If he had to describe it, he would say that he could block it for a while longer, but now, he couldn't block it for a while longer. Belle, on the other hand, came back to her senses when she heard Wuming's familiar words. It was a word that could summon a golden giant that could instantly suppress Gulao. His Royal Highness must be in danger. Although she did not see the golden giant, Ling knew that Galji was still in danger. Your Royal Highness. Ling struggled to get up while shouting for Galji. Then, Ling used her grace to come to Galji's side and prepared to transfer him away. But at this moment, Wuming smiled. Ling! Back off! Galji yelled at Ling. However, before Ling could react, a rune that had been inscribed on the ground lit up and enveloped her. Ah! Ling screamed and fainted on the ground. That's a rune. That's right. The runes on the ground were the rune runes that Wuming had drawn with his mental strength. As a rather famous rune, even though Galji wasn't proficient in it, he could at least recognize it. As expected, you guys are easier to deal with than Maxwell. After all, Maxwell couldn't be killed. Wuming finished his sentence and pushed Galji away with his arm that was filled with the divine strength of his giant form. Galji was pushed back more than 10 meters, and Silent Sound's huge force even caused Galji's feet to leave 2 trenches in the ground. Damn it! Galji lowered his arm with a look of indignation. In terms of physical fitness, he couldn't compare to Wuming. His other abilities were basically useless against Wuming. Only his trump card might be effective against Wuming, but because of Wuming's sudden attack, Galji didn't have time to use it. And now, although Galji had pulled away from Wuming and could use his trump card, but, now, isn't it time for me to threaten you, Your Highness Galji? Wuming's sarcastic tone entered Galji's ears. A golden giant appeared behind Wuming, and in the giant's hand was the unconscious Ling. Let me tell you another piece of information. Don't get close to me easily. You'll be at a disadvantage. Of course, that's if you have the chance in the future. Galji dared to threaten Wuming with No Name as companions, and Wuming dared to fight to the death with Galji. Literally, you die, I live. Chapter 829. Galji admitted that he guessed wrong. It wasn't that he guessed wrong that Wuming wouldn't attack him, but that he guessed wrong about Wuming's strength. When he threatened Wuming with No Name, Galji was prepared to fight with Wuming. Reality proved that what he heard was false, and what he saw was true. Perhaps it was because everything had been smooth sailing all this time, which made Galji a little careless. The strength that Wuming displayed was completely beyond his imagination. This time, Galji was defeated. Sir Villo, how about we each take a step back? I'll let my subordinates retreat from No Name and not touch anyone or anything in No Name, and you sound the bell and let us leave. After all, everyone had the other party's weakness in their hands, and they couldn't fight to the death. Taking a step back was the best solution at the moment. However, this best solution was based on the fact that No Name was successfully attacked by Galji's subordinates. You think too much, Your Highness Galji. Are you sure your subordinates have completed the mission you gave them? What do you mean? Galji's expression changed slightly. You can try to contact your subordinates and see how they're doing with their mission. However, Galji couldn't do the super long-distance communication from the Eastern District to the Northern District, from 7 digits to 5 digits. Perhaps, only Wuming had such a method. He guessed that Galji couldn't do it, so Wuming raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Black and purple ripples appeared, and the giant behind Wuming reached its free hand into it and then stretched it out. However, when it stretched out, the originally empty golden giant hand had a dying figure in a black robe. It looked like a woman. Aurora. Galji's expression changed when he saw this. It was the subordinate he sent to No Name. "Sorry, Your Highness, we miscalculated." After Aurora finished speaking, she fainted. "When Letitia signed the contract with me, although her current strength is still very vague, it shouldn't be lower than 4 digits. In fact, it's even higher than before. I'm afraid you guys don't know about this. After all, ever since Letitia became Wuming's maid, she had been with Wuming almost all the time. She had only helped a little during the fire dragon's birth ceremony. But because she didn't use her full strength, Galgi and the others still believed that Letitia had lost her quintessence. Therefore, Galgi only sent Aurora alone to No Name to deal with Letitia, who had lost her divinity. As a result, Aurora was taken down by Letitia, who had obtained a new power. After that, Letitia contacted Wuming through the dependent contract, letting Wuming know that the enemy had been taken down. "If you let this guy bring some of Absolute Evil's doppelgangers with him, I'm afraid Letitia will have to put in more effort. She might even be able to take the opportunity to escape." The golden giant behind Wuming shook the arm that was grabbing Aurora, which was rather ironic in Galgi's eyes. Galgi fell silent. He only had a few subordinates, and they were considered his confidants. It was impossible for him to give them up so easily like Pest. At this moment, a huge dragon flew out from the capital of Raging Flames. "Your Highness!" The huge dragon roared. Whoosh! The huge dragon's descent caused the airflow to flow like a storm, blowing the surroundings. Then, the emblem engraved on the huge dragon's body suddenly lit up. In an instant, the huge dragon transformed into a griffin. Wuming recognized the griffin at a glance. It was the griffin he had captured with Ling last time, the one named Glea Grove. "So it's Genome Tree, huh?" At this moment, the emblem on Glea's body was extremely similar to the emblem on the wooden carving hanging around Hiroyuki's neck. There was no doubt that it was the Genome Tree. Perhaps the ability to transform into a huge dragon was the ability bestowed to Glea by the Genome Tree. "Elder Galgi, are you hurt?" Wuming's clone had headed to the capital of Raging Flames with the weapon known as the Divine Blade of Salvation. Galgi was rather worried that Glea Grove, who was left behind to assist the giant demon king in attacking Salamandra, would be injured by Wuming's clone. "I'm fine, Your Highness." Glea's griffin head shook, then turned to Wuming. "After that guy went over, I immediately retreated from the capital of Raging Flames." He knew how powerful Wuming was. His godly speed that seemed to be able to control time and his immense strength that even he couldn't compare to. Just these two abilities alone were already troublesome for Glea. Moreover, Glea was worried that since Wuming could spare time to support the capital of Raging Flames, would Galgi and the others be in danger? Therefore, he left the capital of Raging Flames and flew over. It seems that it's a clone. After arriving here, he saw that Wuming was still here. Glea understood that the one who went to the capital of Raging Flames to support the capital of Raging Flames should be a clone created by Wuming with a special gift. "Although it's a doppelganger, the doppelganger has the same strength as me," Wuming explained kindly. Although this explanation was rather sarcastic in Glea's eyes. "Your Highness, what should we do next?" Glea lowered his head and asked Galgi beside him. He naturally saw that Belle and Aurora, who was here for some reason, had fallen into the hands of the other party. Coupled with Maxwell's disappearance, their current situation was very grim. However, as long as Galgi was here, it would be fine even if they were all sacrificed. Therefore, Glea was actually asking if they should retreat. Indeed, just as Glea thought, as long as Galgi was still here, there was still hope because they had all gathered here for Galgi. If Belle and Aurora were still awake, they would probably ask Glea to leave with Galgi immediately. However, it was impossible for Galgi to leave just like that. If he left just like that, he wouldn't be him anymore. Moreover, it was still uncertain whether the other party would let him go or not. According to the intelligence, Wuming had the ability to increase his speed to the point that it was as if he had paused time. Gleo alone couldn't take Galgi away. It would be fine if Maxwell was still here, but it was obvious that he couldn't rely on that guy now. How about, I use that to give it a shot? Galgi's eyes flickered. Just as Galgi was in a dilemma, Wuming made a suggestion. I say, Galgi, do you want to make a deal with me? Deal? Galgi frowned. Of course, there are no eternal enemies, only eternal benefits. Didn't you mean that before? The golden giant behind Wuming stretched out his arms and showed the unconscious Belle and Aurora to Galgi. If it's you, you should have a lot of good things, especially the good things from No Name. For example, the flag of No Name. Chapter 830. But Galgi shook his head helplessly. Unfortunately, I was born less than 3 years ago, so I can't take out most of the things from No Name. Because No Name was attacked 3 years ago, Galgi wasn't even born yet. Less than 3 years. Wuming was surprised. I see. That's why you said you're a prop. Although Galgi looked about the same age as Ren, he was only created as a prop with less than 3 years of life. I was born with the body of a child, and the knowledge in my head is all man-made common sense. That's why I yearn for freedom so much. When Galgi spoke, his eyes were full of hope for freedom. That's not an excuse for you to destroy other people's lives. Wuming suddenly said. After a long sigh, Wuming closed his eyes and looked at Galgi again. You know, although I'm not human, I grew up as a human. It wasn't until the old man who adopted me passed away that I knew I wasn't human. Grew up as a human. Galgi was also stunned. That's right. The old man who adopted me deliberately hid it. Although he knew I couldn't live like a human for the rest of my life, he still hoped I could live a normal life for a while. As if recalling his life on Earth in another world, Wuming's eyes were full of memories. That old man was very ordinary. He even believed in science before he found me. As if recalling the director who adopted him, Wuming showed a warm smile. You know, Galgi, we're very similar. We're all people who like to do whatever we want for important things. Galgi didn't say anything and just listened quietly. Although I'm not human, the old man taught me how to be a human. As Wuming spoke, the majesty in his golden eyes that were already full of divinity increased by another level. You worked hard to resist the fate that others imposed on you for freedom. That's not wrong, but you shouldn't impose the same tragic fate on others, because if you do, you'll become someone you hate. In the end, he concluded solemnly. You have strength no less than 4 digits, companions who trust you, and the name of Galgi, the 10th incarnation of Vishnu who saves the world. Even if it's not for others, just for your own name, don't let it down. Galgi didn't say anything. It was impossible for him to be affected by Wuming's words. Although it wasn't as long as Shiro Amikusa's 60 years of waiting, Galgi had still worked hard for 3 years. How could he be so easily swayed by a few words? However, it was impossible to say that it had no effect at all. The last sentence, in particular, left a deep impression on Galgi. Don't disappoint, huh? Galgi fell silent. No one had ever said such a thing to him, including Glea, who was beside him now. At this moment, Glea looked at Wuming rather approvingly. To be honest, if not for the fact that his master, Galgi, and Wuming were on different sides, they might have become friends. Although Galgi fell into deep thought, Wuming wouldn't just wait for him. All right, tell me what you have. If I'm satisfied, I'll let them go. Wuming's tone also calmed down, as if it had nothing to do with him. The reason why he told Galgi all this was because he felt that it was a waste for a special young man like Galgi, who was born less than 3 years ago, to put his energy into extreme freedom. If he restrained himself in the future, it would be fine. Everyone would mind their own business and go their own ways. After all, the two of them had just met. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were strangers. Wuming didn't want to ask what Galji would choose. However, no matter what, he had to tear off 2 pieces of meat from him before letting him go. At the very least, he had to teach him a lesson and let Galji know that No Name wasn't so easy to touch. Although most of the things in No Name aren't with me, I still have a few. Galji reacted. Right now, it was better to complete this deal and leave as soon as possible. Then, Galji said something that surprised Wuming and made him happy. Your community, the former flag of No Name. Blazing Flame City, Salamandra's headquarters. The surroundings were a mess. A large number of houses had collapsed, and there were a large number of giant corpses in the ruins. There were still many places in the entire Blazing Flame City that were still burning. A group of Salamandra members were busy putting out the fire, cleaning up, and looking for survivors. In the office of the leader of Salamandra, Shadora Teldarek, who had finished signing the temporary documents at hand, sighed tiredly. It's finally done. She put the documents aside for the time being and leaned back on the chair. Knock knock. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock on the door, Shadora immediately sat up straight, showing a very dignified look. Please come in. Pushing the door open was Shadora's brother, Mandela Teldarek. What, so it's brother? Shadora breathed a sigh of relief again. Shadora, you can't slack off. Mandela walked to the desk and put a new batch of documents on the table. More documents. Shadora had to deal with these temporary documents again. It couldn't be helped. Blazing Flame City was basically in chaos because of the Demon King's attack. Although it was now solved, there were still many problems left. Salamandra, as the local snake of Blazing Flame City, had to shoulder this responsibility. And this fell on the leader of Salamandra, Shadora. There's really no other way. I'll help too, but in the end, you still have to approve it. Mandela pretended to be serious and said. After all, Shadora was the leader of Salamandra, not Mandela. Yes, you've helped a lot, brother. Although Mandela looked very arrogant, Shadora still knew her brother. Mandela was the type of person who had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Beside Shadora's desk, Mandela took some documents and sat down at the small table for visitors. Shadora approved the documents while chatting with Mandela. It's all thanks to Sir Villow's timely arrival that the casualties were reduced. Shadora couldn't do anything to the Demon King for a while. It was Wuming's clone who came and defeated the Demon King with the Divine Blade of Salvation. As soon as the Demon King was defeated, the other giants also panicked and were all killed by Salamandra. Mandela didn't have much of a good impression of Wuming, so he just softly agreed. However, he had to admit that this time it was really thanks to Wuming's powerful support. Oh right, according to the information from the guards, a golden half-body energy giant appeared near the west gate of Blazing Flame City, but it has disappeared now. Sigh, is it a new enemy? Shadora was shocked. I don't know the details, but he has already rushed over. Mandela shook his head. This, he naturally referred to Wuming. It's already solved. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the window. Chapter 831. As soon as he said that, Wuming jumped in through the window. Sir Villow. Shadora was shocked. Please use the front door in the future, Mandela said sternly, but Wuming didn't listen at all. The one who came to support you was my clone. The real me encountered an enemy outside the city. Wuming sat down next to Mandela and began to explain. So that means, that golden giant was a gift from Sir Villow. That's amazing. Shadora's small eyes blinked. After all, this kind of summoning ability from a giant was very rare. However, Mandela didn't care about this. What he cared about was that the one who came to support was a clone. Even a clone was this strong. By the way, Sir Villo, did you destroy the enemy? Shadora asked with concern. Wuming shook his head. They had the gift of teleportation, so they ran away. Of course, this was a lie. Even if he was an ally of Salamandra, Wuming wouldn't tell them that he let Galji and the others go after the deal. First of all, with Mandela's personality, he would definitely criticize Wuming's behavior again. Although Wuming didn't care about Mandela's words, it would save him some trouble. Secondly, in a sense, he was cooperating with Galji and the others. If this spread out, it would have a slight impact on No Name. Is that so? Indeed, if it was the gift of teleportation, then it would be troublesome. Shadora nodded as if she understood. Although Shadora was a little disappointed that she didn't catch them. After all, even if those people weren't the mastermind behind the attack on Flame Capital, they definitely had something to do with this attack. As the leader of Salamandra, Shadora loved her people like her own children from the bottom of her heart. Flame Capital suffered such a disaster, and because Shadora didn't protect the people well, she naturally became hostile to the enemies who caused all this. However, compared to hostility, Shadora blamed herself more. Wuming saw a trace of self-blame in Shadora's eyes, so he comforted her. The enemy is not an ordinary person. He has an even greater power behind him. It's understandable that Salamandra is unable to stop him. This was also the reason why Wuming had let Galji and the others go. If they killed Galji and the others, the people behind him would definitely send new people to cause trouble. In that case, it would be better to leave Galji alive. After all, Wuming had a good understanding of the other party. It would be easier to deal with him the next time they met. Lord Villo, you don't have to comfort me. Our Salamandra is indeed lacking in many aspects. As the leader, I cannot absolve myself from the blame. After all, Salamandra was a community that relied on numbers. They didn't have any high-level combatants. In addition, after the death of the previous leader, Shadora, who had succeeded the position, was too young. Salamandra had been in the 5 digits for a while now, and they were almost unable to hold on. If it wasn't for the smooth hosting of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony and the news of Shadora's victory against the Demon King, which greatly increased the reputation of Salamandra, Salamandra would have been transferred to the 6 digits outer sect. However, it was different from Luos's intention of transferring Perseus to the 6 digits. Luos took the initiative to transfer Perseus to the 6 digits so that he could spend the rest of his life eating and drinking. Perseus originally had a strong foundation. If Luos worked a little harder, no matter how bad his talent was, he would still be qualified to stay in the 5 digits. In the end, because of Luos's squandering, Perseus lost the ability to stay in the 5 digits. In the end, because of Luos's lack of foresight, Perseus was disbanded. As for Luos, it was unknown whether Luos was dead or alive. Shadora, on the other hand, had no choice but to move her Salamandra to 6 digits. In the end, because of Shadora's tireless efforts, Salamandra was able to maintain the 5 digits. Shadora's position as the leader of the hierarchy was also gradually accepted by the people. Don't be depressed, Shadora. When you grow up, our Salamandra will definitely welcome the peak again. Mandela said, his eyes filled with hope for the future. Yes. Brother, I will definitely work hard. Shadora also encouraged herself. She couldn't be depressed just because of this. At this time, Wuming also spoke. I heard that the reason why Shadora took over the position of leader is because her bloodline is denser. I don't know if it's true. This was something that Wuming had heard by accident. The reason why Mandela didn't take over the position of leader, but rather the younger Shadora, was because Shadora's bloodline was much denser than Mandela's. That's right. Our ancestor is the Star Sea Dragon King. Shadora has a bloodline power comparable to the Star Sea Dragon King. When she grew up in the future, this bloodline power would become Shadora's backing, allowing her to fully qualify to be the leader of the hierarchy. It would also allow Salamandra to gain a foothold. This was also why no one publicly objected to the young Shadora taking over the position of leader of the hierarchy. They only privately stirred up trouble. One shouldn't bully the young for being poor. After thinking for a while, Wuming spoke. If I find my body again, I can help you. Shadora and Mandela were taken aback. They didn't quite understand what Wuming meant. My body is also a dragon. I don't think I'm any weaker than the Star Sea Dragon King. My blood should be able to strengthen Shadora's bloodline power and make her stronger. Putting aside the fact that Thous and Yes and No Name were allies, just based on Shadora's personal attitude towards No Name, Wuming wouldn't be stingy. So Sir Villo is also a dragon. Then this must be fate. Shadora stood up excitedly. All the dragons under the heavens were one family, and Wuming was their ally, Salamandra. In addition, Shadora had always had a good impression of Wuming, and now it could be said that they were even closer than before. Ahem. Mandela coughed and motioned for Shadora to calm down. Let's talk about it in the future. Shadora doesn't need a sudden surge of power. She needs to work hard step by step. To be honest, Mandela admitted that Wuming was strong. However, he didn't think that Wuming was weaker than the Star Sea Dragon King. Anyone would give empty promises. In the end, it was still a matter of fact. Wuming, who understood Mandela's meaning, only smiled casually and didn't say anything. It's about time for me to go back, Wuming said as he stood up. Are you leaving already, Sir Villo? We haven't thanked you for coming to help us. Shadora wanted to ask Wuming to stay. At least a simple meal was good enough. No, I still have to go pick up Vera. Wuming walked to the window as he spoke. Speaking of which, is there anything important in Salamandra? Wuming's sudden question stunned Shadora. Something important? We don't have anything important here. Sir Villo, I wish you a safe journey. Mandela suddenly interrupted. After looking at Mandela for a few seconds, Wuming nodded. Okay, I got it. Then, Wuming jumped out of the window. At the same time, Wuming heard frantic voices behind him. Please remember to use the front door in the future. Chapter 832. Between the 3999999 outer gate and the 4000000 outer gate, where the fire dragon's birth ceremony was held and where Absolute Evil's clone had attacked not long ago. On the clock tower that Wuming had repaired in the past, Vera sat alone on the edge of the clock tower, looking at the town that had yet to be repaired due to the attack of Absolute Evil's clone. As the wind blew, Vera's huge but harmonious twin ponytails swayed gently. Vera, who was already unusually beautiful, was even more moving in the silence at this moment. If Maxwell were here, he would probably go crazy with excitement. However, even if it were someone else, if they saw this scene now, they would also be stunned by Vera. For example, Wuming, who came to pick up Vera now. As soon as Wuming walked out of the teleportation gate, he saw such a picturesque scene. Looking at this scene, coupled with the cool breeze on the clock tower, Wuming's last trace of dissatisfaction for not being able to catch Maxwell disappeared. Why was it the last trace? Because most of his dissatisfaction disappeared because of the deal with Galgi. Seeing Wuming's arrival, Vera, who was sitting on the edge of the clock tower, immediately got up and jogged to Wuming's side, grabbing his sleeve again. Are you hurt? The fairy-like voice once again entered Wuming's ears, bringing great pleasure to Wuming's mind. Of course I'm not hurt. The only person who can hurt me is probably myself. Wuming hadn't been hurt for a long time, except for the time when he fought with Gidia. Only the black mud of the same origin could cause serious damage to Wuming. The other damage to Wu Ming was negligible. Vera nodded and continued to ask. Is it done? Without a doubt, Vera was asking about Maxwell. He ran away. I don't know about that guy's resurrection ability, so I can't kill him now. Wu Ming shook his head. Vera was surprised. After all, every time she met Maxwell, she could only run because no matter how she attacked and killed Maxwell, that guy just wouldn't leave. He had an "I'm not afraid of you" look on his face. And Wu Ming was able to chase Maxwell away, which made Vera look at him in a new light. However, Maxwell was only so obsessed with Vera. When you love a person, no matter what she did, you would think it was her love for you. For example, Vera kept killing Maxwell, and in Maxwell's eyes, it was Vera's love for him. One had to admit that Maxwell was a freak. However, Maxwell wasn't a masochist in the face of Silent Cry's constant attacks. Since he couldn't beat him, he would just leave. Reality was that reality. However, immediately after that, Vera felt a little uneasy to kill Maxwell. As if she could see that Maxwell would continue to tail her in the future, Vera's grip on Wu Ming's sleeve tightened. It's okay, Vera. Next time, I will take care of him. Wu Ming's eyes flickered. She didn't know if he thought of a solution. Vera was puzzled. Why did Wu Ming say, "Can't kill him," and then say, "I will take care of him"? Although they had only known each other for a short time, Vera had a good impression of Wu Ming. He wasn't an arrogant person. Wu Ming patted Vera, who tilted her head in confusion and kept her in suspense. You don't have to kill Maxwell to take care of him. Trust me, don't think about Maxwell for now. Vera nodded. Just like Wu Ming said, she just needed to trust him. Next, there was the problem of Vera's whereabouts. I'm going back to No Name. Do you want me to send you back to the outer door of Willow's Wisp? Wu Ming asked. But Vera shook her head. Wu Ming was stunned for a moment before he reacted. I'm the one who thinks too highly of myself. Vera could control the realm door. When he went to the outer door of 54545, it was Vera who took him there. Therefore, it was easy for Vera to go home by herself. And Wu Ming had never been to the outer door of Willow's Wisp, so he couldn't send her back. Then you can go back by yourself. I'll go first. Wu Ming opened the teleportation door and was about to walk in. He had to hurry back to No Name and give Laetitia and the others a surprise. But Wu Ming realized that Vera, who was pulling on his sleeve, didn't have any intention of letting go. Let's go together, Vera said calmly. They were both ghosts and had the same teleportation door ability. Moreover, Wu Ming was willing to help her deal with Maxwell. Vera liked this kindred spirit very much. Therefore, Vera felt that following Wu Ming would be better. Anyway, she was wandering around the North District by herself. If she didn't follow Wu Ming, would she have to wander around by herself and be followed by Maxwell again? But this made Wu Ming helpless. You are the leader of Willow's Wisp. Is it okay for you to wander outside for a long time? If Rin wandered outside for a long time, not to mention the other members of No Name, even Rin himself wouldn't forgive himself. No, it shouldn't be said like that. It should be said that Rin wouldn't do such a thing. However, it was Vera who nodded her head. After all, her Willow's Wisp was a big business, and the people of Willow's Wisp were used to Vera slacking off daily. Thus, Vera expressed that there was no problem. In any case, Wu Ming once again understood why Vera wasn't the leader of the hierarchy. Then, let's go back together. Following Vera's nod, the two entered the teleportation door. 2105380 Outer Gate, No Name's headquarters. In the room that belonged to Wu Ming, a dark purple ripple appeared. Wu Ming and Vera walked out. You're back. Wu Ming let out a long breath. This trip to the North District was really tiring. But, in the end, it was still a fruitful trip. Is this considered a Villow's home? Vera suddenly asked. This question made Wuming fall into deep thought. Logically speaking, the Great Root should be Wuming's home. However, although the Great Root was the home that Wuming had always been pursuing, Wuming didn't really want to stay there forever. It was fine if Wuming didn't cherish it after he got it. In any case, Wuming liked to interact with people. That kind of life was a good life for Wuming, and he didn't want to quietly sleep alone in the Great Root. How do I put it? This place is like home, but it's not home. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a place to rest, because I won't stay in this place forever. Wuming replied. Although Wuming didn't like to stay in the Great Root, but Wuming only had one home, and that was the Great Root. But the definition of home is different for everyone. In my opinion, it's not a place where people gather that is called home, but a place where there are people who are worthy of being entrusted with. That place can be called home, and the current no name, to me, is such an existence. Although Wuming didn't join no name for long, and he left not long after, feelings were hard to define. Wuming, 16th Night, Black Rabbit, and the others got along very well, and they were very much to his taste. Moreover, they were sincere to Wuming, so there was no reason for Wuming not to treat them with sincerity. And because of this, the home of no name was formed. And this conflicted with the former, which was why Wuming said that it was like home, but it wasn't. In short, whether it's a home or not, just enjoy the life in front of you. If you think too much, it'll be very hard. Vera nodded thoughtfully. Let's go, Vera. Let's go out. I've prepared a surprise for my companions. Wuming said as he pulled Vera towards the door. I wonder if 16th Night and the others are back. With that in mind, Wuming pushed open the door. Chapter 833. Kacha. Opening the door, he was greeted by a petite figure. Wah. Letitia, who didn't expect the door to open by itself, bumped into Wuming and let out a whimper. Moss. Master, you're back. Letitia took 2 steps back, shook her head, and asked in embarrassment. Sorry, Letitia, I just came back. I didn't expect to see you at the door. Shaking her head, Letitia smiled. I just wanted to clean the room for Master. As she said this, Letitia also noticed that there was an extra person behind Wuming. Master Vera. Then, Letitia recovered from her shock. Although I can almost guess what the reason is. It should be Maxwell's doing. As Letitia said this, she looked at Wuming with some jealousy. Letitia was clearly the one who was following Wuming around, ahem. Speaking of which, Letitia, is everyone not back yet? Although it was better to let 16 Knights and the others stay in the southern district, it was not the territory of no name. Although it was safe to have 16 Knights and the others, it was not good to take the initiative. How could the safety of the southern district be left to the people of the eastern district? Whether it was the southern district or the eastern district, it would have a huge impact. Wuming didn't think that the smart guy 16 Knights wouldn't have thought of this. But Letitia shook her head. Not yet, but I think they should be on their way. Letitia was also a very smart person. What Wuming and 16 Knights understood, Letitia naturally understood as well. If that's the case, I'll wait for everyone to come back before I take out the surprise I prepared. Wuming smiled mysteriously, took Vera around Letitia, and left the room. Surprise. Letitia tilted her head, puzzled. In the end, Letitia shrugged and walked into Wuming's room. After all, cleaning had to be done. In the corridor, Wuming dragged Vera, who didn't know what was going on, and strolled along. Although I want to show you around no name, I'm going to find White Yiksha. Are you going to follow me or stay in no name to rest, Vera? Wu-Ming said to Vera without looking back. Vera didn't say anything. She could do whatever she wanted. Vera, it's better for you to stay in no name. I'm only going to White Yiksha to give him some information. I'll be back soon, and it's very safe here. Maxwell won't come. There's no need for him to keep following me. Vera nodded and replied softly, however, he had to find someone to keep an eye on Vera. He couldn't let Vera stay in a room alone and wait for Wu-Ming to come back. Should I go back and look for Letitia? However, just as Wu-Ming was thinking, Lily suddenly walked out from the corner in front of him. Sir Villo, are you back? Then, Lily noticed Vera, who was pulling on Wu-Ming's sleeve and hiding behind Wu-Ming. What a cute child. Sir Villo, who is she? Lily looked at Vera curiously. She seemed to be very interested in Vera. Because she had never seen Vera before, and Lily wasn't familiar with the leader of Willow's North District, Vera Ignifost, Lily didn't think that the charming and cute little girl behind Wu-Ming was such a big shot. Instead, Wu-Ming's eyes lit up and he nodded. This is Vera. I met her in the North District. Vera, what a cute name. Lily jogged to Vera's side and held her hand. I'm Lily. I can call you Vera. Vera tilted her head and looked at the little fox girl Lily. She didn't say anything, but her eyes kept wandering between Lily and her chest. This made Lily's expression gradually freeze. From the looks of it, Vera and Lily were about the same age. It was just that her chest developed a little too quickly. Because Vera was behind Wu-Ming, Lily didn't notice it at first. Lily smiled a little awkwardly and kept numbing herself in her heart. It's just that I developed slowly. I'm going to White Yiksha's place. Can I ask Lily for a favor? Lily was taken aback, but then she nodded. Of course, Lily just happened to have some free time. What is it? Wu-Ming smiled and pointed at Vera. Help me look after Vera, how about it? Lily naturally had no objections. Of course, I'll get along well with Vera. Looking at Lily's smile, Wu-Ming felt that it was the right thing to do not tell Lily about Vera's identity. That's it, I'll leave it to you. Opening the portal, Wu-Ming looked at Vera again. Get along well with Lily, don't bully her. Wu-Ming saw the scene of Vera showing off her chest to Lily before. It made sense that natural airheads were all black when cut open. Vera nodded obediently. Then, I'm leaving. She plunged into the black and purple ripples of the portal. Have a safe trip, Lily responded enthusiastically. Okay, Vera, this is your first time in our community, I'll show you around. After Vera nodded silently, Lily took Vera's hand and walked around. And Vera quietly took out a hammer from behind where Lily couldn't see. 21053880 Outer Gate, Thous and Yes, Branch. In the room where White Yiksha often stayed, the black and purple ripples appeared and Wu-Ming jumped out. No one. Standing up, Wu-Ming looked around in confusion. Usually, White Yiksha would sit here and drink tea, eat snacks, and rest. But with the current situation, it was understandable that White Yiksha didn't have time to be so leisurely. But at this moment, the door was pushed open. Kacha, a white-haired loli walked in. It was White Yiksha. Oh, you're back. White Yiksha wasn't surprised by Wu-Ming's arrival. She closed the door, calmly walked to her usual seat, found a cushion, and sat down. Wu-Ming sat down as well. I found a new clue. Then, Wu-Ming told her the information about Galji and the others, as well as his own speculations, in an extremely indirect manner. Galji, ha. A hint of hatred appeared in White Yiksha's eyes. It wasn't hatred for Galji, but hatred for the people behind Galji. I didn't have a good impression of that bunch of stubborn people from the beginning. I just didn't expect them to attack boxing. What White Yiksha was talking about was naturally the unknown faction behind Galgi. Although she didn't know who it was, White Yiksha was sure that it was one or more of the upper levels of the Boxers. As White Yiksha spoke, she could not help but release an invisible pressure. Wuming could naturally sense White Yiksha's anger, so he didn't say anything else. After a while, the pressure disappeared, and White Yiksha calmed down. "What should we do next?" Wuming asked casually. As a senior of the Boxers, White Yiksha naturally had more right to speak than Wuming. White Yiksha wasn't in a hurry to answer this question. Instead, she asked Wuming. "What do you think? Deal with it as it comes." Chapter 834. Wuming said without hesitation. The enemy's true goal was completely unknown. Although Wuming wanted Galgi to reveal some information during the deal, Galgi expressed that it might disrupt his plan to pursue freedom, so he rejected it. Wuming, who did not have enough bargaining chips, could only give up and simply carry out some transactions. "I guess that's the only way." White Yiksha sighed helplessly. The Box Court was an incomparably mysterious world. Naturally, the other party's goal was even more difficult to guess because of this mysterious world. Not to mention that the Box Court's own people were playing tricks behind the scenes. At that moment, Wuming closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. White Yiksha was not idle either. He took out his gift card and took out 2 teacups and a teapot. The teapot automatically poured tea into the teacups. "I say, White Yiksha, how many are there in the human final trial?" Wuming opened his eyes and suddenly asked. White Yiksha picked up one of the teacups and took a sip. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Wuming. "Oh, you want to start with Galgi himself?" White Yiksha immediately understood what Wuming meant. "Of course." Wuming shrugged, picked up a teacup, and took a sip as well. Then, he put it to his right. Galgi is a tool that was born less than 3 years ago. In this Box Court world that values inheritance, other than Galgi's own nature, I can't think of any other place that would need this useless tool to play a role. Just like other stories and myths, there were many heroes like Galgi. However, there was only one nature. Galgi could not be said to be the best, but it was also extremely rare. The nature that Wuming mentioned referred to Galgi's nature of coming to save the world at the end of the world. The end of the world for humans is probably referring to the human final trial, last embryo. The Box Court world was greatly influenced by the so-called inheritance. Like a law, if humans were unable to defeat the final trial, then humans themselves would walk towards destruction. And didn't the final trial of mankind require a savior-type hero like Galgi to appear and defeat the apocalypse of mankind? Only Galgi, who had such an inheritance, could perform the magnificent feat of saving the world, humans. And gods are inseparable from humans, Wuming said, thinking of his experience in Mesopotamia. In order to connect the gods and humans, the gods created the wedge of heaven and the lock of heaven in an attempt to bind the gods and humans together. Would the gods of Box Court need to do the same? No, there was no need for that. Box Court was a world where mystery existed, or rather, it was a world created for the sake of allowing mystery to exist. Also, if one had to say something, the gods and humans of the Box Court had already been separated. After the gods came to the Box Court, the separation of the gods and humans was completed. With the development of time, humans advocated science and abandoned mystery. However, as long as humans were still around, the gods would at most weaken. In any case, they would not completely disappear. Therefore, the gods of Box Court did not need to spend so much effort to connect the gods and humans like the gods of Mesopotamia. Wuming's gods are inseparable from humans had another meaning. The separation of the gods and humans was inevitable, but the two existed in different worlds. As long as humans were still around, the gods would be fine. However, if humans were to go extinct, it would be a serious blow to the gods. Could it be that some gods want to save humans through Galgi and pass the human final trial, last embryo, to finally achieve the goal of saving themselves? However, if outsiders were to hear this, they would definitely think that this idea was ridiculous. Because, almost no gods would do that. White Yiksha shook his head. You also said almost, right? Wu Ming smiled. If it was not absolutely, then it was a possibility. White Yiksha was speechless. He could only bury his head and drink his tea. However, he also indirectly agreed with Wu Ming's words. After all, the gods are not without desires. White Yiksha raised his head and said calmly. If humans were to go extinct, then they, who had eternal life, would not live for long. Since that was the case, there would always be gods who would start preparing for a rainy day. However, I still say the same thing. Almost no gods would do that. This was just like the organizers of the lucky draw who had already decided on the winner. It did not conform to the rules. But not everyone has to eat with their right hand, right? There were always exceptions. The so-called rules were used to restrict the weak. Artificially liberate the human final trial, last embryo, and let their own pawns cross it to save their own lives. Wu Ming raised his hands as if he was weighing a scale. Then, he continued. It's fine even if you fail. Give up everything you can. As long as you're still alive, there will always be a chance to solve it. As Wu Ming spoke, he slammed his right hand down as if it was a part that needed to be abandoned. However, they never thought about how disastrous the consequences of failure would be for others. Coincidentally, the hand that fell hit the teacup that Wu Ming had placed to his right. The teacup tilted and collapsed, spilling tea all over the floor. I'm not targeting anyone. I don't have a good impression of most gods. I can imagine how bad they are. After all, Wu Ming was on the side of humans. Be careful. White Yiksha looked at the floor. She was quite dissatisfied with Wu Ming's tea spilling. Speaking of which, what is your brain made of? You can actually make such a connection. To be honest, White Yiksha increasingly felt that Wu Ming's words made sense. Galji's existence itself is a very big point of suspicion. If there really was another purpose, then why did they deliberately let a prop that had been born less than 3 years ago do it? This was obviously a problem. They had to send an experienced person to do it. This meant that this matter had to be done by Galji. However, Galji's superiors had arranged for someone to keep an eye on him. That person was Maxwell. Not only did Galji say, "We are not on the same side," but Maxwell himself also revealed the feeling that he was not on the same side as Galji. It was no wonder that they would hide their secret operations. Once they appeared in front of the world, they would definitely be guessed through their names, actions, and other aspects. For example, Wu Ming, who had already obtained a lot of information, boldly made a guess. Well, let's put this problem aside for now. Let's talk about the human's final trial first. No matter what, as long as there was a glimmer of possibility, he had to grasp it and explore it in depth. Actually, I was once one of the human's final trial. White Yiksha seemed to recall a long time ago as her eyes showed a trace of absent-mindedness. You. The human's final trial. It was no wonder that Wu Ming was stunned. This was like knowing the true identity of the old man who had been your neighbor for decades with Superman. What? I'm the sun's astral spirit after all, a manifestation of the heavenly oracle. White Yiksha glared at Wu Ming proudly. I got it. Please continue. He extended a hand and politely motioned for White Yiksha to continue. Fortunately, Wu Ming's ability to accept things was very strong. Even if you told Wu Ming that White Yiksha, this lowly, was once a mature sister, he would still accept it. In short, it's fine as long as you know that I'm one of the humans' evil. Chapter 835. I once used the identity of the White Knight Demon King to wreak havoc in the original box court. I used the identity of the human final trial to wreak havoc in the box court. Putting down the teacup in his hand, White Yiksha began to explain seriously. But due to the development of science, humans gradually understood incomprehensible phenomena and existences. For example, humans understood that the heaven-shaking theory was wrong. Correspondingly, White Yiksha's strength was greatly weakened. After my heaven-shaking theory spirit lattice was exploited, I was defeated and finally converted to Buddhism. From this, it could be seen that although humans were weak, humans had a great influence on powerhouses who were restrained by legacies. Then, White Yiksha, will you become an enemy of humans? Wuming wasn't concerned about whether White Yiksha would become an enemy, but he was worried that White Yiksha would be suppressed if he became an enemy. The so-called human final trial was for humans to train. This meant that humans would be defeated in the final trial. Oh, are you concerned about me? White Yiksha narrowed his eyes with a sneaky smile. After all, they were friends, so he was naturally worried. However, Wuming didn't want to admit it when he saw White Yiksha's smug face. I'm considering whether to plan ahead on how to kill you, Wuming answered without hesitation. That's a pity. Due to the heaven-shaking theory being unraveled and my conversion to Buddhism, my rights to the human final trial have stopped. But then, White Yiksha's tone changed. However, if I return the Godhead and retrieve the spirit lattice, the rights to the human final trial can still be reactivated. Is that so? Wuming nodded. This was one of the reasons why White Yiksha didn't retrieve the spirit lattice to fight the Demon King 3 years ago. However, if it really comes to that, I will have no choice but to return to the upper levels of the box court. Even if White Yiksha didn't want to return, the people in the upper levels of the box court wouldn't let a two-digit box court powerhouse stay in the lower levels. Although White Yiksha would only think for the people in the lower levels by staying in the lower levels, once this precedent was set, it would be troublesome for other powerhouses to run to the lower levels in the name of being the ruler of the social class. Don't doubt it. Some people like to be a local tyrant. But if you leave, it will be quite troublesome. Wuming looked helpless. If I leave, I will recommend you to be the ruler of the Eastern District. White Yiksha did not hide anything. In fact, when White Yiksha promised Wuming that he would protect the East District and, no name, even if he had to return the Godhead, White Yiksha had already made up his mind. I don't want to be the ruler of the hierarchy and cause trouble every day. There's no other way. I can only put in more effort to make you obediently stay at the bottom. Looking at Wuming's appearance, White Yiksha could not help but laugh. Since you've said so, it seems that I can only do as you say. Then, the two returned to the main topic. Other than the earth-shattering theory, there are many other theories about the last embryo, such as dystopia, wandering endgame, absolute evil, and so on. But White Yiksha paused. Basically, these demon kings of the last embryo are no longer a threat for the time being because of the various measures taken by the people of the box court. Therefore, White Yiksha did not think in this direction. You said it yourself that it's only temporary. Galgi and the others might want the last embryo to reappear, Wuming asked. For example, human evil. When he saw Absolute Evil's clone, White Yiksha had said that Absolute Evil had been sealed. But the community in charge of guarding Absolute Evil's seal told me that the seal is intact and no suspicious people have been found recently. After experiencing the attack of Absolute Evil's clone, White Yiksha immediately contacted the manager. Moreover, ever since No Name sealed it 200 years ago, the seal has always been perfect and has never been broken. Oh. Absolute Evil was sealed by No Name 200 years ago. Wuming really did not know about this. After all, No Name was once the largest community in the East District. Naturally, it had some glorious results. White Yiksha shook his head matter-of-factly. Looking at White Yiksha's smug expression, those who did not know would think that White Yiksha was the one who sealed absolute evil. If that's the case, the place where absolute evil was sealed is probably related to No Name. Now, it was still managing the seal of absolute evil. It was probably an ally of No Name 200 years ago. That's right. The community managing the seal of absolute evil is an ally of No Name, White Yiksha said slowly, then looked into Wu Ming's eyes. The current 5-digit community in the North District, Salamandra. Wu Ming was deep in thought. Long ago, Wu Ming had guessed that Galji and the others had attacked the outer gate of the 54545 for some reason. The reason why he only suspected this was simple. The East, South, West, and North districts had all been attacked by absolute evil's avatars. The West district was not attacked a second time. The South and East district were attacked a second time in the same place. Only the North district was attacked a second time in a different location. Wu Ming originally had some guesses about this. With a series of clues and the fact that White Yiksha said that the place where absolute evil was sealed was the headquarters of Salamandra, perhaps Galji and the others really did something in the outer gate of the 54545. However, the conditions for unsealing the seal of absolute evil are very special. White Yiksha's next words attracted Wu Ming's attention. Very special. Then, White Yiksha extended a finger. First, you must have Sun sovereignty. Sun sovereignty. Wu Ming's expression changed slightly. It was unknown if he thought of something bad. What's wrong? White Yiksha noticed the change in Wu Ming's expression and asked kindly. Nothing. Speaking of which, Sun sovereignty should be very difficult to collect, right? Wu Ming shook his head and continued the current topic. No matter where the sun was or which world it was in, it was a crucial deciding factor. There were tens of thousands of god groups in the box court world, and each god group had an existence related to the sun. Therefore, in order to take care of the many powerhouses related to the sun, Sun sovereignty was divided into 24 portions. However, if I remember correctly, you should have more than half of the Sun sovereignty, White Yiksha. It was said that White Yiksha had 14 Sun sovereignty. In that case, there were only 10 suns scattered outside. However, 10 Sun sovereignty was not enough for hundreds or thousands of god groups. However, although that was the case, if it was someone from the upper echelons of the box court behind Galji, it was reasonable to have 1 or 2 Sun sovereignty. However, White Yiksha's next words shocked Wu Ming again. Not only do I have multiple Sun sovereignty, but my enemy also has multiple Sun sovereignty, and there are 6 of them. In that case, wouldn't there be only 4 Sun sovereigns left outside? In that case, Sun sovereignty was even rarer. It was no wonder that it was a condition for unsealing. Even so, having Sun sovereignty was still one of the conditions. The second condition for unsealing is the Star Sea Dragon King's horn. Wu Ming knew about this. The Star Sea Dragon King was Shadora's ancestor. It was said that the horn on Shadora's head was transplanted from the Star Sea Dragon King, and it was a horn with great power. However, the Star Sea Dragon King's horn is currently on Shadora's head in perfect condition, Wu Ming said. He had just met Shadora. Shadora's horn was still bright and beautiful, and there was no damage at all. It was impossible that someone had secretly replaced Shadora's entire horn. No matter how weak Shadora and Salamandra were, it was impossible for them to be that weak. Are there any other conditions? Wu Ming was more or less relieved. There is a third condition, which is the last one. White Yiksha's expression became serious. Seal the flag of the community of absolute evil. Chapter 836. Hearing this, Wu Ming could not help but narrow his eyes. The flag of the community that seals absolute evil, wasn't that the flag of no name? That's right, it's the flag of no name, White Yiksha said with certainty. So, my guess was right. Wuming said subconsciously. What did you guess right? White Yiksha looked at Wuming in confusion. This had nothing to do with what she said, right? I always feel like you've been hiding something from me. Facing White Yiksha's suspicious gaze, Wuming could not help but laugh. How could that be, cough cough. Let's call it a day. At this moment, Wuming seemed to be in a relaxed state. Wuming's sudden relaxed state made White Yiksha begin to complain. Don't be too relaxed. Although the Sun Sovereign is rare, if there's someone behind the other party, it's not impossible to get it. The Starseed Dragon King's horn is even more so. As for the flag of no name, don't forget that 3 years ago, no name was taken away by the Devil King. Combined with the information you provided, it's most likely those people. To put it simply, White Yiksha was quite worried about whether the other party would break the seal of absolute evil. Don't worry, the enemy can't do anything anymore. Standing up, Wuming stretched his body. But White Yiksha still wanted to refute, but Wuming immediately interrupted him. Alright, I've prepared a surprise for Ren and the others. I have to go back and prepare in advance. With a wave of his hand, black and purple ripples appeared beside Wuming. Do as you please. White Yiksha took a sip of tea in a fit of pique. Don't worry, White Yiksha. Wait until tomorrow, you'll know why I'm not worried that the seal of absolute evil will be broken. At that time, please take care of no name. With another wave of his hand, Wuming plunged into the portal. The portal closed immediately. I'll know tomorrow. Take care of no name. What do you mean? Bai Yiksha, who didn't like to keep people in suspense, complained unhappily. Then, he took out his gift card and prepared to take out some snacks to eat with the tea. However, like unpredictable fate, White Yiksha seemed to realize something as his eyes suddenly widened. Could it be? Looking at his reflection in the teacup, Bai Yasha smiled. So that's what you mean. There really is such a guy. He took out the desserts from the gift card and put away the gift card. White Yiksha held a teacup in one hand and a dessert in the other. Well, if that's true, then it's a happy ending. Then, White Yiksha took a bite of the snack. At the entrance of No Name's headquarters, a dark purple ripple appeared, and Wuming jumped out. Wuming had not walked through the main entrance for a long time, so he decided to walk through the main entrance. Have we arrived? Looking at the two huge magic puppets guarding the door in front of him, Wuming walked in without hesitation. They were not summoned by summoning tools like the magic puppets in the manor. These two huge magic puppets were high-level magic puppets that Wuming summoned from the inherent enchantment, Nazalik's underground tomb. If it was someone without authorization, the two gigantic magic puppets at the door would stop the person from entering. If they tried to force their way in, they would be attacked by the huge magic puppets. Of course, the magic puppets could only stop low-level tiger men like Jard. If someone like Maxwell tried to force his way in, these two magic puppets could only act as an alarm at best. In the end, they would have to rely on other people in the community. However, with these two magic puppets guarding the door, it felt quite cool. In short, it was better than nothing. Walking into the courtyard of No Name, Wuming saw a bright and beautiful scene. Different from the dilapidated scene he saw when he first walked through the main entrance, the scene Wuming saw now was completely different. The barren land became full of vitality, the originally dry river was filled with clear water, the seemingly broken house was renewed, and the courtyard that did not have any greenery was now full of vitality. Not bad. Wuming was quite satisfied with this. Although Wuming did not often wander around No Name, he was still a member of No Name. Wuming was happy to see No Name become better. Wuming was happy to see No Name become better. Moreover, when he thought about the things he successfully traded with Galji, Wuming's mood became even better. By the way, although I wanted to take Vera around before, it seems like I haven't been to No Name much myself. Wuming said as he walked around No Name. However, as Wuming walked around, he noticed that there was a problem not far away. Wuming quickly walked over and saw Pest and Vera confronting each other, while Lily stood at the side, not knowing what to do. Moreover, if Wuming was not mistaken, there was a hammer on the ground beside Pest. What happened? Wuming could not help but ask. Servillo. Lily's voice was full of surprise, as if Wuming's arrival had completely resolved the situation between the two. However, that was more or less correct. When Vera saw Wuming, her short little legs fluttered as she ran to Wuming's side and pulled on his sleeve. When Pest saw Wuming, his face paled even more. It seemed like he was still a little afraid of Wuming, but not as serious as before. What's going on? Wuming did not look at anyone but Lily. After all, the onlooker had a clearer view. I was bringing Vera around when we suddenly bumped into Miss Pest. Then, Vera attacked Miss Pest with a hammer, and then... Lily did not continue, but Wuming understood. After that, Pest probably sensed Vera's danger and did not attack her directly. Instead, they stared at each other and started a confrontation. From the looks of it, Wuming could more or less guess what had happened. Pest, are you hurt? As the victim, Pest naturally needed to be concerned. How could I be hurt by a mere hammer? I was just a little annoyed that I was suddenly attacked, and it was my head. Although Pest was touched by Wuming's kindness, he was still very afraid of Wuming, and his voice was filled with weakness. Since you're not hurt, you can leave first. Wuming knew that Pest was not hurt, so he did not question his words. I know. Pest said in an aggrieved tone. Then, he left without stopping, as if he didn't want to stay any longer. Lily, you should leave too. Please take care of Vera for me. How could it be troublesome if I can help Servillo? Lily smiled in response to Wuming. It's almost lunchtime, so I'll leave first. See you later, Servillo, Vera. With that, Lily left too. In the end, only Wuming and Vera were left. Alright, Vera, why did I attack Pest with, a hammer? Wuming squatted down and looked at Vera. Because I was interested. It was a very short answer, but it left Wuming speechless. Was it only because you were interested in Pest? Vera even showed a surprised expression when she heard Wuming's question. It was as if she was saying, if it wasn't because I was interested, then what else could it be? All right. Wuming sighed helplessly. As expected, there was no lack of problem children in this world. Just then, Lily suddenly ran back. Servillo. Everyone is back. Wuming's eyes lit up. Finally back. Chapter 837. No Name's usual chat room cum meeting room. Although there was a realm gate and it wasn't a long journey, after leaving home for a long time, the first thing to do after returning was to rest. You're finally back. Jiao Fei now sat on the sofa and elegantly took a sip of the black tea she had just prepared. Fei Niao is indeed a young lady. Haruai Hayashi, who was sitting next to Jiao Fei Niao and stroking the three-furred cat, couldn't help but say. It's just a habit. Do you want to learn etiquette? I can teach you. Jiao Fei Niao seemed a little excited and looked at Haruai Hayashi as if she was offering her services. However, Haruai Hayashi shook his head. That's not necessary. She wasn't cut out to be a young lady. She preferred to spend time with her friends naturally. After all, Haruai Hayashi's personality isn't suitable. Ren, who was resting on the opposite side, said weakly. After spending some time together, the members of No Name had a certain understanding of Haruhi Hayashi, this seemingly innocent but actually two-faced girl. Haruhi Hayashi didn't care about Ren's words at all and even nodded in agreement. I think that as our no-name's mascot, Black Rabbit is very suitable for learning etiquette. Haruhi Hayashi said as he looked at Black Rabbit, who was also resting on the sofa. The Black Rabbit, who was resting with its eyes closed, jumped up when it heard someone talking about it. Its ears also twitched. Black Rabbit also has etiquette knowledge, Yao-san. Although Black Rabbit's etiquette knowledge may not be as good as Miss Fei Miao's, he doesn't need to learn it. Black Rabbit had the title of a Hakata aristocrat. In addition, Black Rabbit had been a judge for a long time, so etiquette was necessary for Black Rabbit. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot, Black Rabbit. Haruhi Hayashi covered his mouth and snickered. Yes, that's right. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot. Jiu Fei now didn't cover her mouth and snickered, but she also gave Black Rabbit a proud smile. Ren could only smile awkwardly. Teasing Black Rabbit had become a daily routine of no name. And no way, Black Rabbit is not a mascot. Black Rabbit, who was once again teased by the two of them, blushed. You two problem children don't always think about teasing Black Rabbit. Just as Black Rabbit was about to get angry, 16 Knights, who was standing by the window, suddenly spoke. It's so noisy. Black Rabbit, everyone just came back. Can't you be quieter? 16th Knight's solemn words entered Black Rabbit's ears, which made Black Rabbit lower its head in shame. I'm sorry. Of course, her face was still completely red, but this time, it was out of guilt. The others didn't say anything either, as if they were affected by 16th Knight's suppressed tone. However, at this moment, 16 Knights suddenly turned around. Speaking of which, didn't that Villo guy come back? Why can't I see him? 16 Knights didn't seem to be suppressing his emotions at all as he looked at everyone excitedly. The Black Rabbit was stunned. Who was the one who said to be quieter? It was as if Black Rabbit was hallucinating when he said that. After being separated for such a long time, I really miss him. No matter what, we should have a good fight. Ha ha ha. 16th Knight laughed, but his laughter sounded like mockery to Black Rabbit's ears. Could it be? Ren suddenly realized that 16th Knight was playing with Black Rabbit again. However, Jiu Fei Niao and Haruhi Masaaki looked like they had already guessed it. Sure enough, Mr. 16th Knight is the biggest problem child. Black Rabbit was once again driven mad by his antics. Gotcha. At this moment, the sound of the door being pushed open attracted everyone's attention. You're still so energetic, everyone. The voice was heard before the person was seen. Then, a familiar face with black hair and red eyes appeared. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Mr. Villo, long time no see. Ren stood up and politely greeted Wuming. Long time no see, Villo. Jiu Fei now gracefully greeted. Haruhi Masaaki, who was not good with words, only nodded at Wuming, but the smile on his face was particularly conspicuous. Wuming did not reply to them one by one. He just looked at them one by one and spoke to everyone. Everyone, long time no see. Then, Wuming had a smile on his face. Yo, little brother, I missed you so much. 16th Knight, who was standing by the window, walked toward Wuming, flipped over the sofa with one hand, and jumped in front of Wuming. You've been doing well recently, haven't you? Wuming smiled helplessly. First, he participated in all kinds of gift competitions in the Southern District, and then he was attacked by Absolute Evil's clone. 16th Knight must have had a good time punching him. Thanks to you, ha ha ha. At the same time, Wuming and 16th Knight reached out a fist each and gently touched each other. Then, Wuming looked at everyone. Although I know you're probably tired, I've prepared a surprise for you. Do you want to take a look? Surprise. Ren, Black Rabbit, Jiu Fei Niao, and Haruhi Masaaki were stunned. Don't keep us in suspense, hurry up and take it out. 16th Night put one hand on her waist and waved the other hand in the air. Jiu Fei Niao and Haruhi Masaaki also nodded. Since it was a surprise, he had to take it out directly. That was the understanding of surprise by problem children. However, Wuming began to keep them in suspense again. There's no rush when everyone is here. However, when he said that, everyone was basically here. For example, now. Knock knock. The door that Wuming had not closed was politely knocked twice. Then, Lily's voice came from behind Wuming. Sama, I've brought Letitia-sama and Miss Pester here. Wuming smiled slightly. Please take a seat, everyone. In the conference room next door, for the first time in 3 years, there were a lot of people gathered. Near the wall, there was a very dignified rectangular table surrounded by the main members of No Name. Actually, this room was the real conference room. The previous room was just a chat room for the members of No Name to rest in. Sometimes, they were too lazy to change places, so it was used as a conference room. At the front was the leader of No Name, Ren Russell. On Ren's left and right sat Wuming and 16th Night. However, this was slightly beyond Ren's tolerance limit. Let's forget about it. Ren's forehead was sweating due to nervousness. You're the leader, Ren. Wuming sighed. It's natural for the leader to sit at the top. 16th Night smiled. Our No Name is going to rise in the future. You have to work hard to master the calmness of a leader. Wuming said while knocking on the table. Besides, we're all on the same side. What's there to be nervous about? Just be normal. However, Ren just smiled awkwardly. It's because we're all on the same side that I'm nervous. Everyone believes in you, little guy. 16th Night held his chin with one hand and pointed at the other No Name members. Ren looked at 16th Night, then looked at the other members who were looking at him with encouraging eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I understand. Sitting at the top, Ren straightened his back and looked serious. I hereby announce that the official No Name meeting begins now. Chapter 838. This meeting was suggested by Mr. Villo, so the first speech will be given to Mr. Villo. Ren reached out his hand and pointed at Wuming. Wuming gave Ren face and nodded. This meeting was suggested by me, mainly because I want to share with everyone the surprise I brought back from the Northern District. Wuming said and looked at everyone. At this time, the seat next to 16 Knights, Haruhi Hiroyuki, who was sitting there, raised his hand and said. It shouldn't be an ordinary surprise, right? If it was an ordinary surprise, there would be no need for this kind of meeting. That's right. Wuming nodded and didn't say much. Because Wuming wanted to use action to prove it. Wuming reached out his hand, and the golden dragoness space ripple appeared on the table. The golden ripple moved horizontally, and a rectangular piece of cloth was spat out from the golden ripple and neatly laid on the table. This is Ren, who was sitting at the head of the table, as well as Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to Wuming, were all shocked and immediately stood up. A flag. Jio Yuko, who was sitting next to Haruhi Hiroyuki, saw the truth of the cloth and was puzzled. It was a red flag with a golden border, and the pattern on the flag was a girl with hills and earth as the background. Miss Hiroyuki, that was our No Name's flag. Lily, who was sitting next to Hiroyuki, said with a trembling voice. At the same time, a few drops of tears fell from Lily's cheeks. The reason why Lily didn't stand up emotionally was because Lily was crying so emotionally that she didn't have the strength to stand up. Our flag. Ren, who stood up, reached out his hand and wanted to touch the flag that belonged to No Name, but because Ren was sitting at the head of the table and the position of the flag wasn't close to Ren couldn't touch it at all. On the contrary, Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to him, easily touched the flag. "That's right, it is indeed our flag," Letitia said with absolute certainty. Mr. Villo, how did you find our flag?" Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming with tears in her eyes. The emotional Black Rabbit also shed tears, and its voice began to tremble slightly. Just like Lily, it was the excitement and joy of the return of the No Name flag. "I got it from the Demon King who attacked No Name 3 years ago." Following that, Wu Ming told everyone about what had happened between him and Galji. Wu Ming did not tell the members of No Name everything that had happened in the past. After all, it was too complicated. Therefore, Wu Ming only told them the important things. After he finished speaking, Wu Ming didn't do anything else. He just waiting for the members of No Name to digest the information he had brought. To put it simply, because you captured their important subordinates, you have forced them to complete this trade, right? 16 knights easily understood the information that Wu Ming had brought. "But, Mr. Villo, why didn't you capture all of them? Maybe you could have investigated the Demon King who attacked our community 3 years ago." Black Rabbit asked Wu Ming rather excitedly. "Calm down, you perverted rabbit," 16 knights said rather rudely. "Didn't you hear what Villo said? They have some power behind them, and they might even be from the upper echelons of the box court." 16 knights' eyes were full of ridicule. Of course, 16 knights was not ridiculing Black Rabbit, but the box court. The upper echelons of the box court created the box court, and then used others to cause trouble in the box court, causing a disaster to the box court. It was as if the partners of justice were actually the villains of the boss. How ironic. Jiu Fei now also opened his mouth to explain to Black Rabbit. "If we capture all of them, the people behind them will send new puppets to the lower echelons of the box court. If that was the case, it would be better to let Galji and his people, who he knew pretty well, cast a long line to catch a big fish." Hiroi Hiroyuki also spoke. "Also, didn't Villo say that Galji has the tendency to betray the people behind him?" Although Hiroi Hiroyuki had no intention of befriending Galji, the saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," still made some sense. What Jiu Fei Niao and Hiroi Hiroyuki said was actually the problem that Wu Ming had considered at the time. Therefore, Wu Ming did not choose to cooperate with Galji, nor did he choose to completely fall out with him. In the end, Wu Ming chose to make a trade with Galji. They did not form an alliance, nor did they form an enemy. It was just a simple trade, although Wu Ming was a bit rough. Galji and his people are not a threat. The key is that 4-digit demon king called Maxwell. After Wu Ming said that, the others also had a serious expression. "He has an immortal body, so it seems that my fists are useless." 16 knights shrugged and said in a relaxed tone. "I'm afraid my ability won't be of any use either." Jiu Fei now shook her head. Hiroi Hiroyuki looked at his hand, then looked at Wu Ming. "Villo, you can't do anything to him either." "I can't do anything with normal methods, but I haven't tried any other special methods." Then, Wu Ming looked at his palm and slowly clenched it into a fist. "The next time I see him, I'll try to use a sealing technique to deal with him. If you can't beat him to death, then don't beat him to death." It was such a simple principle. "But according to what you said, he won't easily appear in front of you, right?" Jiu Fei now asked. Maxwell was scared by Wu Ming's blade of salvation, so he abandoned Galji and the others and ran away. Not to mention that it would be difficult to see him again, Maxwell would probably run away immediately after seeing him. "I naturally have a way to make that guy walk into a trap." Wu Ming smiled and kept them in suspense. "Keeping us in suspense again. Jiu Fei now snorted in disdain at Wu Ming's suspense and turned her head to the side. It's like wine, the more it is brewed, the more fragrant it gets. Wu Ming finished and looked at Ren, who was in deep thought. Ren, do you have anything to say? However, Ren sighed slightly. I'm a bit concerned about Galji. According to what you said, he is about the same age as me, but he was used as a prop less than 3 years old. The point was that Galji and Ren were the leaders of their respective communities. Plus, he was born less than 3 years ago as a prop, so the pain he suffered must not be any less than Ren. You can't sympathize with him, Ren. You know, because of Galji's plan, many people's families were destroyed and they died an unnatural death. Wu Ming's face was serious. If he was not worried about the power behind Galji, even if Wu Ming did not execute Galji and the others on the spot, he would have captured them and handed them over to White Yiksha. After all, a pitiful person must have something to hate. For freedom was not an excuse to hurt others. I'm sorry. Ren lowered his head guiltily. But 16th Knights refuted Ren. This is not something you need to apologize for, leader little thing. Kindness would sometimes bring about mistakes, but the starting point of kindness was never wrong. Also, leader, don't always show such a lack of confidence. You need to be more confident. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. Listening to advice was a good thing, but don't always put your status so low. After all, Ren was the leader of No Name. Yes. I'm very sorry. Ren was at a loss. By the way, Mr. Varen, did you manage to get anything else from No Name from Galji? Black Rabbit quickly tried to smooth things over for Ren. Of course, even if I intend to let them go, I still have to skin them alive. Chapter 839. In the next second, Wu Ming took out a card out of thin air. It was Wu Ming's gift card. When Wu Ming and 16 knights first arrived at the box court, the 4 of them went to White Yiksha to appraise the gift according to Black Rabbit's suggestion. At that time, White Yiksha gave each of them a gift card that could be used to store items. However, Wu Ming had the dragon nest space, so he didn't use it often. But, if it's this, I'm afraid my dragon nest space isn't suitable for storing it. As Wu Ming spoke, the gift card in his hand flashed. That was the sign that the item stored in the gift card was taken out. A dragon-like object and a ball of light filled with the aura of the sun appeared in front of everyone. This is a divinity and the sun. Pesht, who had been sitting beside Letitia, was shocked and couldn't help but shout. Pest had been bestowed with the prestige divinity, so she was naturally familiar with it. As the incarnation of the Black Death who was closely related to the sun, Pest was also familiar with the power of the sun. Furthermore, Pest looked at the divine spark and the sun's sovereignty with a thirsty gaze. If she could obtain the rights to these 2 blessings in this loot-sharing convention, she believed, her strength would definitely undergo a qualitative change. Now, because of Wu Ming, she had reached 4 digits. If she added the divinity and sovereignty of the sun, even if she couldn't reach 3 digits, she would reach the peak of 4 digits. However, Pest could only think about it because the aura of this divinity seems like. 16 knights couldn't help but look at the silent Letitia. Mr. Villo, could this be? Black Rabbit had more or less guessed it. That's right. This is Letitia's divinity and sovereignty of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation, Wu Ming said with certainty. Pesht, who heard Wu Ming's words, had a look of regret. Since it was a gift from Letitia in the past, then it definitely had nothing to do with her. Letitia's divinity. Jiu Yuan Flying Bird was stunned. Sovereignty of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation? Hiroi Hiroyuki stopped stroking his cat. As expected, these are all gifts from Senior Letitia. The Black Rabbit was overjoyed. As if reflecting Black Rabbit's words, the divinity and sun sovereignty slowly floated in front of Letitia. I didn't expect Galgi to have Letitia's gift. Ren was quite excited. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Letitia's things could come back. Divinity and sun sovereignty were not small items. One could transform a creature's body into the highest grade of a species, while the other was even rarer. There were only 25 sun sovereignty in total, not to mention that this sun sovereignty in Ophiuchus constellation was created for Letitia. More importantly, if the things that originally belonged to Letitia returned to her, Letitia's strength would definitely improve further. In this way, not only was No Name one step closer to its former peak, but Letitia had also completely recovered. Like a broken jigsaw puzzle, No Name would be pieced back together bit by bit. And Ren believed that with Wu Ming and 60 knights around, this jigsaw puzzle would be even more beautiful than before when the time came. In response to Ren's question, Wu Ming naturally nodded his head. Regarding this question, I will explain it later. Then, Wu Ming looked at Letitia. Okay, Letitia, quickly put away the divinity and sun sovereignty. But, Letitia hesitated. Master. Letitia looked at Wu Ming with guilt and gratitude. Her face was full of hesitation. Wu Ming, who already had a tacit understanding with Letitia, understood Letitia's eyes. Letitia was not willing to accept the gift that originally belonged to her. As for the reason, perhaps it was guilt and self-blame for giving up her own power, or perhaps it was because she wanted to let others use it, or perhaps it was because she was satisfied with the power that Wu Ming gave her. All of these could be the reason why Letitia was not willing to accept it. But, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. Even if Letitia was Wu Ming's, even if Letitia took the initiative to give up these gifts, even if these gifts were separated from Letitia for a long time, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. This divinity was originally yours, it's just returning it to its original owner. As for the sun's sovereignty, among all of us here, Ophiuchus constellation is the most compatible with you. If you don't want it, then this sun's sovereignty is useless. After all, the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation was originally an additional sun's sovereignty that the box court system created for Letitia. Don't be blinded by power, but don't take the initiative to give up the power that you deserve. Only with power can you protect the people you want to protect. The others didn't say anything, they just quietly watched this scene. If you still feel guilty, then take this power and protect, No Name, well, protect the box court well. This is the atonement for your previous incarnation of the Demon King to wreak havoc on the box court. It's also the mission that I, as your master, have given you, Letitia. At that moment, without waiting for Letitia's reaction, Wu Ming forcefully stuffed Letitia's divinity and the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation into Letitia's body. Letitia sighed and smiled helplessly. Master, I understand. I promise you, this body will always be loyal to you, I will definitely carry out your will to the end. At that moment, Letitia's aura also suddenly changed. An invisible pressure spread out in all directions, everyone present noticed Letitia's change, even Lily was no exception. Now, with all of her previous power restored, plus the power that Wu Ming gave before, it could be said that Letitia was now at the top of the 4 digits. Now, even White Yiksha who didn't return the divinity and spirit core couldn't do anything to Letitia. Whoa. Pest let out a few unwilling whimpers. Damn it, I'm so envious. That's great, Senior Letitia. Lily's little tail wagged. If there was anyone who was the happiest, it would definitely be Lily. As someone who didn't have much battle power and wasn't part of the main force, but was able to sit together and discuss with everyone, Lily was naturally very happy to see her comrade's power rise to another level. If she didn't have any power, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger. If she couldn't protect her comrade, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger to protect the other comrade. As for herself, who didn't have much battle power, she just had to do what she was supposed to do, for example, do the logistics work that her comrade gave her. Thank you, Lily. Letitia returned Lily's bright smile. The surprise that Mr. Villo brought really scared me. We have to hang up our flag. This way, our no name will once again have a community with a flag. Black Rabbit excitedly held up the flag, ready to do as he said. Then, Wooming raised his hand to signal Black Rabbit to not be anxious. Don't be anxious, Black Rabbit, I also got something from Galgi. However, this frightened everyone. Hey you, did you really skin the other party? Chapter 840. 16th Knights ridiculed in an exaggerated tone. In fact, whether it was 16th Knights or the others, they were already surprised that Wooming was able to find the no-name flag. And Wooming finding Letitia's divine spark and sun sovereignty was also out of everyone's expectations. Not to mention the divine spark, there were only 25 sun sovereignty. Not to mention the number of people in Box Court, just the number of communities in Box Court was as many as the stars in the sky and the gravel on the ground. It was reasonable to say that Wooming was able to obtain the no-name flag, Letitia's divine spark and Ophiuchus' sun sovereignty from Galgi, but they didn't expect that Wooming would actually ask Galgi to hand over other things. To be honest, everyone began to guess who was the person that Wooming had captured to be able to make Galgi suffer such a big loss. Seeing everyone's doubts, Wooming began to explain. My original request was to return the no-name item, but Galgi wasn't the mastermind behind the scenes, he was just a puppet, so I didn't expect to exchange it for many things. Wooming was hoping to get some other good things from Galgi, but he didn't expect Galgi and the others to carry so many gifts that belonged to no name. The no name flag was taken out from her gift card when Wooming woke Ling up, and Letitia's divine spark and Ophiuchus' sun sovereignty were taken out by Galgi. By the way, the gifts of Box Court could only be obtained through transactions, transfers, or gift competitions. They couldn't be stolen. The community flag was this type of gift. The Demon King used his authority to attack the no-name 3 years ago. The Demon King won, and the flag became the Demon King's possession. After that, the flag was transferred to Galgi, and Galgi transferred it to Wooming through a transaction witnessed by Box Court. If Wooming tried to steal it, the no-name flag might be invalidated by Box Court system. However, Box Ting's system dispelled Wooming's thoughts of taking advantage of others. It was rather regretful. Asterisk cough asterisk cough asterisk, asterisk in short, thanks to the Box Court system, Galgi was able to hand over everything that belonged to no name. The flag of no name, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the sun of the Ophiuchus constellation, and the last one, the sovereignty of the Leo sun. After Wooming finished speaking, the gift card that he had yet to put away suddenly burst out with a ray of light, and the aura of the sun that was no weaker than that of Ophiuchus constellation rushed over. This is another sun sovereign. Pester was shocked once again. There were only 25 sun sovereigns, and Wooming had taken out 2 of them in just a short while. In the lower level of the courtyard, there were actually 2 sun sovereigns in the 7-digit outer sect. What kind of explosive news was this? Speaking of which, other than Letitia, is there anyone else in no name who has a sun sovereign? It wasn't that Wooming was curious, but it was mainly because there were too few sun sovereigns. White Yiksha and her old enemy together held 20 sun sovereigns. Excluding the additional Ophiuchus constellation, there were only 4 sun sovereigns that were wandering outside. Even if no name was once the largest community in the East District, with only 4 people, it was still extremely difficult to collect sun sovereigns. Therefore, when Wooming knew that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation was once bestowed by no name, he was indeed shocked. This once again proved that no name was indeed the largest community in the East District. That was the sun sovereign that the Sun Lion once held. Black Rabbit began to explain. Because it was a divine beast that pulled the chariot of the sun god, it coincidentally obtained the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation. However, 3 years ago, it and its other companions were captured by the demon king that attacked, no name. Black Rabbit's expression was a little sad, as if it was recalling what happened 3 years ago. However, Galgi holding the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation proved that Galgi and the others had an undeniable relationship with the demon king that attacked, no name. Even the sun sovereign has returned to our hands. No Name's former companions will be found in the future. Seeing the depressed Black Rabbit, Wuming opened his mouth to comfort him. Yes, I understand, Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit shook his head and once again revealed a smile. He couldn't always be depressed, he had to be motivated. Speaking of which, who should I give the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation to? Wuming was distressed. At this time, Pest was eager to give it a try. However, Pest didn't even have time to speak. Since Master brought it back, then it's appropriate to give it to Master to use. Letitia suggested. Anyway, I don't need it. 16th Knights shrugged his shoulders. He, 16th Knights, wasn't going to take advantage of it. I don't need it either. I have Dean. Miss Jiu Fei Niao was the same. She didn't want the favor of charity. If there was a need, she would fight for it herself, just like when she obtained Dean. Haruai Biao also shook his head. I just want to make friends. As for me, Mr. Villo already lent me Argel. Ren was slightly embarrassed when he said this. When Ren first heard that Wuming wanted to give him Argel, he was scared silly. That was a star spirit, wouldn't it be making a mountain out of a molehill if he gave it to him? However, in the end, under Wuming's tough attitude, Ren had no choice but to borrow it from Wuming. Wuming wasn't going to take it back anyway. Naturally, I don't need it either. Letitia also shook her head. Not to mention that she already had the sun sovereign of the Ophiuchus constellation, she had already gained enough from this loot-sharing conference. Naturally, she didn't need it. Black Rabbit doesn't need it either. Black Rabbit shook his head and his rabbit ears swayed along with it. Black Rabbit was mainly the judge of the gift competition. Even in terms of combat power, Black Rabbit wasn't to be underestimated. He was given 4 godhood equipment by Sakura when he was young and was worshipped by the rabbits as the son of God. Black Rabbit was actually very strong. Lily doesn't need it either. After all, Lily is a support staff. Lily laughed mischievously. I don't need it either. Wuming shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He had the sun incarnation and didn't need the power of the sun. As for the sun sovereign's ability to summon star beasts, it was just a summon. With the dependent incarnation, it was equivalent to a summon. Therefore, Wuming didn't need the sun sovereign. However, Pest was roaring in his heart. If you don't need it, you can give it to me. Finally, Mr. Pest made a rare speech. Cough cough. According to the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation's ability, as well as everyone's ability, we can just make a reasonable plan. No matter what, he had to fight for it. Wuming looked at Pest meaningfully. Pest was almost scared to death. In the end, Wuming nodded. What Pest said makes sense. Immediately after, Wuming looked at Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, does the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation have any other abilities? If the sun sovereign was only able to summon star beasts, it would be too cheap. The Black Rabbit stretched out a finger and gently tapped its chin. I remember that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation can give the wielder the ability to reflect all weapons. It's a pretty good ability. I see. Wuming nodded. Then, give this to 16th Knight. Chapter 841. Wait. Why are you giving it to me? 16th Knights frowned. Was he looking down on him? 16th Knights, you're the only one who fights with your bare hands. You're the most suitable person to receive the gift of reflecting weapons. Wu Ming explained. Among the people present, if they didn't have long-range attacks, they had weapons and items. Only 16 knights relied on his code unknown blessing to fight with his fists. Then I don't want it. 16th Knights put his hands behind his head and looked like he was saying, what can you do if I don't want it? Everyone smiled helplessly. He was indeed a problematic child. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. Then, I'll have the sovereignty of the sun for now. Does anyone have any objections? 16th Knights immediately waved his hand. No objections, no objections. Everyone else nodded. Only Pest, who was angry but didn't dare to say anything, was looking forward to it. But when he saw Wu Ming's face, Pest was afraid and didn't dare to say anything. Then, this meeting is over. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Ren nodded. We also have to do some work for the return of the no-name flag. After all, the return of the no-name flag was a huge change for the no-name and the outside world. And the one who prepared for this change was naturally the leader of the community, Ren. Young Master Ren, I'll help later. Black Rabbit volunteered. She basically had nothing to do anyway. I'll help too. Lily also raised her little hand. Thank you for your hard work. Do your best. Jiu Fei now smiled. Do your best. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded expressionlessly. If you're free, why don't you come and help everyone? You two problematic children. Black Rabbit showed an angry and helpless expression. But the two pretended not to hear. Black Rabbit was used to it and didn't bother with the two anymore. Then, Black Rabbit turned her gaze to the more reliable Wu Ming. But, I said, let's duel, 16th Knights. Wu Ming suddenly looked at 16th Knights. Oh. 16th Knight's eyes suddenly lit up. Hey. Everyone was shocked. Wait a minute. Why do you want to duel all of a sudden? Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming at a loss. This didn't happen all of a sudden, Black Rabbit. 16th Knights raised her head and closed her eyes. Then, 16th Knights looked at Wu Ming. This is a continuation of the unfinished fight between men. Wu Ming shrugged and admitted this point. Although that's part of the reason, the main reason is that 16th Knight rejected my proposal, which made me very unhappy. Then, Wu Ming stretched out 2 fingers and pointed at 16 Knights. The winner will be able to command the winner to do anything, and the loser will have to give the winner a gift as a reward for winning. What do you think? It was different from the simple, if you lose, you have to be obedient. There was also an additional reward. What an interesting condition. I like it. 16 Knights placed her palms on the table, her eyes burning with the flames of war. But then, 16th Knights showed a distressed expression. However, I don't have any extra rewards. How about this? Black Rabbit and I had a gift competition before the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. I received the command to command Black Rabbit to do anything except perverted things. How about this as a reward? 16th Knights emphasized on the word perverted. The falling clock tower that Wu Ming caught with psychokinesis was the masterpiece of the gift competition between 16th Knights and Black Rabbit. Don't emphasize it on purpose. Black Rabbit was on the verge of breaking down. She felt that she had embarrassed herself. No problem. Wu Ming agreed without hesitation. Don't agree so quickly. Black Rabbit wanted to cry but had no tears. Then, how about we use a countdown to see who can cause more damage to the other in the given time? Wu Ming suggested. After all, they were partners. They couldn't really kill each other. But if they didn't kill each other, they wouldn't be able to finish the competition in a short time. Therefore, a countdown was the best solution. A countdown. It doesn't matter. As long as we can fight each other. 16th Night smiled as she rubbed her palms. As she finished speaking, 2 pieces of parchment appeared in front of Wu Ming and 16th Nights. It was the contract for the competition. Gift game name, duel between the two. Use any method to cause damage to the other party in the given time. Contestants, Vilo Saransword, 16th Night's reverse winning condition, after the given time, the damage will be less. Winning reward, command the loser to do anything, 1 time, failure penalty, provide any gift to the winner. Oath, respect the above content. Based on the judgment of the court system, the gift game will be held. Because there was no organizer, the community at the end was blank. After checking that there were no mistakes, the parchment in front of the 2 burned instantly. That meant that the contract was in effect. All right. Without further ado, let's start. 16th Night said and walked towards the door. They couldn't fight in the house, right? Wait. Wait a minute. Mr. 16th Nights, can't we not fight? Black Rabbit asked anxiously. Even though it was a sparring session, Black Rabbit still didn't want to see her companions hurt each other. But Wu Ming shook his head. Black Rabbit, you have to know that 16th Nights is a problematic child. He won't listen to you. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Black Rabbit turned to look at Wu Ming. Mr. Vilo, you just came back from the North District not long ago. Isn't it good for everyone to rest for a while? But this time it was 16th Night's turn to speak. Black Rabbit, Vilo is the most problematic child. You have to know that he was the one who started this fight. I just agreed to it. With a presumptuous smile, 16th Night pushed open the door and walked out without saying anything. Black Rabbit still wanted to say something to 16th Nights, but 16th Nights left the room and closed the door. Wait. Black Rabbit helplessly reached out a hand to the empty door. Sighing, Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming again. Really, Mr. Vilo, you also said. But Black Rabbit's voice stopped abruptly. Because Black Rabbit realized that Wu Ming also disappeared. Master just left using the portal, Black Rabbit, Letitia kindly explained to Black Rabbit. Wu Ming left using the portal when Black Rabbit turned to look at 16th Nights. I'll go check on the 2 of them. Haruai Toshi said and left with San Mao in his arms. I'm interested in a fight between 2 freaks. Jiu Yuanfei nodded elegantly at the crowd and left with Haruai Toshi. Then, excuse me. After saying that, Letitia stood up and left. It seemed that she was also going to watch. Only Pesht, who didn't have much presence, and Ren and Lily who had some conscience were still there. Black Rabbit who was exhausted completely gave up. Black Rabbit sat in her seat, leaned on the table, and yelled as if she had given up. Ah! Really, Black Rabbit doesn't want to care about these problematic adults anymore. Ren and Lily could only smile helplessly. Only Pester remained sulking in his place, jabbing his finger. Sun sovereignty. I need it too. Chapter 842. 16th Nights and Wu Ming walked side by side in the no-name corridor. Although the 2 were about to duel, Wu Ming and 16th Nights were companions after all. Naturally, they would not destroy their friendship because of a mere duel. Speaking of which, have you figured out the other party's goal? 16th Nights asked as he walked with his hands in his pockets. 16th Nights was not talking about Galji's own goal, but the goal of the person behind Galji. It seems like they want Galji and the others to unlock the seal of the final trial. However, the key items are our flag and the sun's sovereignty. Their plot has basically been destroyed. After all, the key items had been traded by Wu Ming. Because the other party's plan had been destroyed, Wu Ming did not go into detail in the meeting just now. Putting aside the sovereignty of the sun, the flag of No Name was unique. After the flag returned to No Name, stealing the flag would no longer work. The only way to obtain it again was through transfer, trade, or a gift competition. However, the first two were impossible. If it was a gift competition, only the Demon King would force others to participate in the gift competition with the flag. And with Wu Ming and the other main forces, there was no need to be afraid. Or rather, if a Demon King were to attack now, it would be exactly what No Name wanted. After all, the slogan of defeating the Demon King had already been spread. They had to defeat more Demon Kings. However, it was not that easy to encounter a Demon King. If a Demon King came knocking on their door, they would be very grateful. Did you not get any information about the person behind Galji from him? 16th Knights continued to ask. It was normal for 16th Knights to pay attention to information. After all, 16th Knights was a smart person. If 16th Knights was still a No Name during this time, Wu Ming would not have looked for White Yiksha first, but 16th Knights. If there is, I already said it. Let's not talk about the other party being very careful and not leaving any clues. Wu Ming denied 16th Knights. After all, most of the information came from Wu Ming and the others after a series of verifications. Galji and the others did not tell Wu Ming any information. Also, Galji refused to reveal any information. Wu Ming felt that Galji just didn't know. After all, he was just a prop that had been monitored for less than 3 years. Although Wu Ming had thought of trading for some other information, such as Maxwell's, before Wu Ming could ask, Galji directly refused to provide any information to Wu Ming. According to Galji, the two parties were only doing a simple barter transaction. Actually, it could also be considered as Wu Ming's bargaining chip not being heavy enough. Ling and Aurora exchanged for the No Name flag, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the Ophiuchus constellation, and the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sunday. Regardless of the quantity, just based on the value, Wu Ming had already gained a huge advantage. Galji, on the other hand, probably wanted to regain some face and indirectly refused to provide Wu Ming with the information. Don't you just want a simple transaction? Then let's just make a simple deal. One hand for the money, and the other for the goods. No money. Then I don't have any goods here either. Thank you for your patronage. Wu Ming was quite dissatisfied with this, but thinking that he could get the No Name flag back this time, Galji's little tricks were nothing. What Wu Ming didn't know was that every gift that Galji gave Wu Ming was something that he had previously planned or had practical abilities. But just because he saw Wu Ming, he was forced to give all these gifts to Wu Ming. It could be said that Wu Ming had skinned a layer of his skin. If Wu Ming knew the bitterness in Galji's heart, he would only think that Galji reaped what he sowed. After all, a layer of skin could be considered Wu Ming giving Galji a small punishment for attacking the box and attacking No Name. In short, it's all over. 16 Knights took the opportunity to take it. What we need to pay attention to now is fighting. Fighting. Seems like you've been waiting for this for a long time. Wu Ming couldn't help but smile. This time, 16th Knights was probably going to vent all the dissatisfaction that he had been holding in since the last fight. Then, Wu Ming suggested. Let's fight in my fixed barrier. You can do whatever you want there. The Colosseum from last time. 16 Knights was naturally talking about the 6th floor of Nazalic where the two-headed dragon army was trapped at the fire dragon birth ceremony. Let's not go there this time. Let's go somewhere else. Wu Ming said. Golden ripples appeared around him, and the twisted golden staff with the 7-headed dragon coiled around it automatically floated out. Grabbing it, Wu Ming tapped the ground with the tip of the staff. Wave-like ripples spread out and surrounded Wu Ming and 16 Knights. The next second, the two disappeared. Just as they turned the corner, Komodo Asuka and Hiroi Biao looked at each other in confusion. I clearly saw the two of them walk over. Could it be that they discovered us? Master and 16 knights went into Master's fixed barrier, Letitia explained as she walked out from behind them. As Wuming's dependent, Letitia could sense Wuming's location. That Colosseum. Komodo Asuka naturally remembered how Wuming brought them to another space during the fire dragon birth ceremony. Letitia, can't you bring us in? Hiroi Biao asked as if he was asking for help. However, Letitia shook her head. Unfortunately, that's an ability brought by Master's grace. I can't interfere. So, we can only wait until the two of them finish fighting. Komodo Asuka sighed helplessly. Staff of Ains Wuming, the 8th floor of the fixed barrier. In the endless wilderness, Wuming and 16 knights faced each other with a distance of more than 10 meters. This place is quite spacious. 16 knights was quite satisfied. There were no plants, animals, and even the ground was dead. They could do whatever they wanted. This is the fixed barrier of the Staff of Ains Wuming. Some are suitable for fighting, while some are suitable for resting. Wuming said as he put the Staff of Ains Wuming into the golden ripple that opened up again. Then, Wuming snapped his fingers and activated the advanced tool creation ability. A huge hourglass suddenly appeared in the sky. Use this as a timer. Wuming looked at 16 knights. However, 16 knights didn't care. It doesn't matter. Let's start. 16 knights showed a very happy smile to Wuming. Then, with one hand raised, Wuming and 16 knights looked at each other. Neither of them spoke nor did they move. Let's start dash. As soon as he said that, Wuming snapped his fingers and the hourglass began to operate. Bang dash, the sound of the ground being crushed was heard. 16 knights' speed was comparable to the speed of Universe 3 as she instantly burst toward Wuming's position. The battle was about to start. Chapter 843. Boom! 16 knights rushed to Wuming's side with the speed of the third universe and smashed his fist down. The place where Wuming was standing instantly exploded, and smoke and dust filled the air. As the smoke and dust slowly dispersed, 16 knights' fist was pressed on the broken ground, and Wuming was nowhere to be seen. Still so impatient, 16 knights. Wuming's figure floated in the sky as he teleported away. It's a countdown match after all. I have to seize the time and enjoy the fun of fighting. 16 knights shook his arm. Because he was a bit agitated, he used a bit more strength to smash the ground. Wuming, who was floating in the sky with psychokinesis, released his power of the will completely and spread it to the ground that 16 knights had punched. Although the ground didn't seem to be broken that badly, and only the surface cracked, Wuming could see through his power of the will that a crack went deep into the ground. Wuming began to wonder if 16 knights would break through this place. The staff of Anziergen's enchantment was connected to the 10 underground floors of Nazalic. It didn't mean that Wuming could only use it on the 8th floor and not the other floors. With 16 knights fist, if he really wanted to break through this place, Wuming wouldn't have any doubts. Of course, if Wuming kept supplying mana to maintain the enchantment could still be repaired if it wasn't broken through in one go. Just like now. The ground under 16 knights' feet seemed to have gone back in time as it slowly returned to its original state. Can this place repair itself? That's not fun. 16 knights was a bit dissatisfied. Why? Things that are broken automatically repair themselves. That's not fun at all. It turned out that 16 knights was a problematic child, and he was the violent type. Then I won't let it repair itself. It'll save my mana. That's what you wanted. Wuming smiled helplessly. Wuming immediately stopped supplying mana to the enchantment to repair itself. That's more like it. 16th Knights laughed wantonly as he bent his knees and jumped. A large scale of cracks appeared on the ground as 16th Knights rushed into the sky. Unable to fly, he could only rely on this method to attack Wuming. Without any fancy moves, 16 Knights' weapon was just his fists. Facing 16 Knights, Wuming responded with the same method of attack, punching. The two unadorned fists collided with each other, causing the entire atmosphere to tremble. Visible shockwaves spread out in all directions with their fists as the dividing line. Boom! After a short stalemate, the two separated. Because 16th Knights was a human, just a slightly special human, he naturally couldn't overcome the gravity of the ground. Thus, 16th Knight's body began to automatically descend to the ground. Wuming, on the other hand, couldn't help but go a little higher due to the inertia from the exchange of blows with 16 Knights. Being able to fly is indeed a good thing, 16th Knights, who was kneeling on one knee, teased Wuming. I didn't think of using this to take advantage of you. Because 16th Knights was so aggressive, Wuming subconsciously used the teleportation door to go to the sky. Wuming finished speaking and landed on the ground. Both of them suffered some damage from the exchange of blows, but Wuming's injury was more serious. Shaking his numb right hand, Wuming smiled helplessly. Sure enough, in terms of explosive power, you have the upper hand. If Wuming didn't have the advantage of being in the air, Wuming would be the first to retreat. However, compared to Wuming who came to the ground to fight with 16th Knights, 16th Knights didn't have the idea of being waterproof. I won't go easy on you. 16th Knights pretended to rush over again. I don't need you to go easy on me either. Wuming swung his fist and met 16th Knight's second punch. Boom, just like before, the ground was split by the shockwave. At the same time, the ground couldn't withstand the impact of the two and shattered, sending rocks flying everywhere. However, this time, the ground didn't recover. On the contrary, a large number of rocks that flew into the sky fell and buried the two of them. Crash! Wuming released his magic and bounced the rocks away. He wasn't hurt at all. What a convenient ability. 16th Knights, who crawled out of the rocks, said enviously. Although he wasn't hurt, 16th Knights, who didn't have the ability to release energy, was in a sorry state. I have many abilities. Moreover, this is just a simple way to release energy. Wuming smiled and didn't mind. Is that so? Speaking of which, is the glowing rune on your body one of your abilities? 16th Knights pointed at Wuming's arm. Wuming raised his hands. Sure enough, there were some runes on Wuming's hands. It's just a lune rune for strengthening. It only increases strength. I used it when I fought with you before. With the strengthening of the lune rune, Wuming wouldn't be at a disadvantage when fighting with 16th Knights. I didn't pay attention at the time. Forget it, it doesn't matter. It's just a strengthening rune. Watch me break it. 16th Knight said and rushed over again. Come and try. Wuming responded with his fist. The battle was still ongoing. Just as Wuming said before that he wouldn't take advantage of 16th Knights, Wuming didn't use any fancy abilities. He just fought with 16th Knights using his fists. Although their attacks were blocked by each other's fists, it was still a response to 16th Knight's request. 16th Knights also used his fists to fight with Wuming. Or rather, he simply didn't have any other abilities. However, 16th Knights didn't need any other abilities. His body was the best weapon. Reality proved that it was just as 16 Knights had said. He would break these runes for Wuming. Breaking the lune rune wasn't a joke. However, every time Wuming's lune rune was broken, Wuming would immediately use telekinesis to inscribe a new lune rune on his body. Gradually, the entire 8th layer of the wilderness was affected by the battle between the two. Basically, there wasn't a single place that was intact. There were craters left behind by fists and legs everywhere. The better places were full of spiderweb-like cracks, and the worse places were completely shattered into pieces. As for the deeper underground, there was no need to guess. It was probably also fragmented. Because Wuming cut off the supply of mana to repair the enchantment, the shattered ground of the 8th layer didn't automatically repair itself. Gradually, the 8th layer couldn't hold on any longer. Caw, caw, caw. The sound of something heavy breaking entered their ears. 16th Knights, who was temporarily separated from Wuming, panted heavily with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Is this place going to collapse? You guessed right. Wuming, who was also panting heavily, responded with a smile. After Wuming said that, the entire 8th layer collapsed. Chapter 844. Generally speaking, if it was a multi-story building, once a floor collapsed, the people on that floor would automatically fall to the next floor due to gravity. However, Nazalik's underground tomb was a magical underground building transformed from the game into reality. Therefore, it couldn't be defined by common sense. As mentioned before, it wasn't just the 8th floor that didn't mean the other floors of Nazalik didn't exist anymore. It must be known that once the staff of Anziergen's inherent enchantment was activated, it would directly open the 10 underground floors of Nazalik. If only one floor was used, the other floors would be idle and wouldn't disappear or exist. When one floor was destroyed, there were 2 possibilities for the people in the inherent enchantment. One was to be transferred out of the inherent enchantment, and the other was to be transferred to the other floors. By the way, Wuming could control which floor they were transferred to. After the 8th floor collapsed, it completely turned into magic and dissipated. The 8th floor was equivalent to being empty. After all, the 8th floor needed time to repair itself after being destroyed. Of course, if Wuming transferred a large amount of magic, the self-repair time would be greatly reduced. Of course, the easiest way was to reactivate Nazalik's inherent enchantment after it was closed. After leaving the 8th floor, Wuming and 16 Knights didn't return to No Name. Instead, they went to the other floors of Nazalik. 9th floor, a lounge in the royal suite. Wuming and 16 Knights' figures automatically appeared. The 2 sat face to face on a sofa with a coffee table. Great! Great! Ha ha ha! I haven't been this happy in a long time. 16 Knights sat on the sofa and shouted happily. 16 Knights had been bored in her original world for 16 years. Moreover, the bet between 16 Knights and Wuming had been delayed for a long time. With the 2 added together, 16 Knights' mood was very good at the moment. I'm finally done with you. You don't use your brain at all when you fight. As the person involved in the fight with 16 Knights, Wuming felt it deeply. Aren't you the same? 16th Knights laughed happily as she looked at Wuming. Indeed, Wuming had almost released the bestial nature engraved deep within him. After all, Wuming wasn't human. It couldn't be helped that he didn't dare. Fighting each other with fists without weapons was the best way to arouse blood. Fortunately, Wuming managed to control himself. Otherwise, the match would have been over. Oh. I didn't expect you to have such a good place. 16 Knights, who was done laughing, began to pay attention to her surroundings. Although Wuming didn't know why 16th Knights had such knowledge, Wuming could tell that 16th Knights was shocked by the excellence of the VIP suites on the 9th floor. After all, this was a place for players to escape from reality. Naturally, they would make it more comfortable. I kind of inherited it. This is all designed by the predecessors. Leaning on the sofa, Wuming snapped his fingers. 2 glasses of wine appeared in front of Wuming and 16th Knights. This is a place to rest. Water and wine are provided for free. Wuming explained. Of course, there was only water and wine. After all, this was a game. There was no such thing as eating, so they could only drink some water and wine. If there's such a good place, you should have brought me here earlier, 16th Night said as she unceremoniously raised her wine glass. Then you and the two of them would have caused a ruckus here. Wuming also responded without holding back. The two of them naturally referred to Jyo Asuka and Kasuga Hibiya, the two problem children. Ha ha ha, how could that be? You have to believe me. We are companions. 16th Nights waved her hand jokingly. Speaking of which, I was tricked by you in the end. The last thing 16th Nights was referring to was the fight just now. When the fight between the two broke on the 8th floor, there was only a bit of sand left in the hourglass. Then, 16th Nights discovered that she was healed by something. What 16th Nights didn't know was that Nazalik's teleportation never had any light. It was just a sudden disappearance. Therefore, the light that appeared when the 8th floor broke wasn't a sign of teleportation. It was the activation of the healing rune that Wuming designed in advance. That was the Lune rune that Wuming buried in the ground while fighting with 16th Nights. Wuming intentionally lured 16th Nights to not stay in the same place to fight. Moreover, 16th Nights, who was lured by Wuming, wouldn't go to the same place to fight. Only then would the healing runes in every inch of the 8th floor not be destroyed by 16th Nights. It was precisely because Wuming and 16th Nights didn't continue fighting in the same place that their fight affected the entire 8th floor. In the end, the healing rune was activated. The hourglass in the sky also ran out of sand, and the time was up. Then, if I didn't guess wrong, the result should be a draw. 16th Night said as a contract appeared in front of 16th Nights. Sure enough, there were two victors on the contract. Victors, Vilot Silensword, 16 Nights in reverse. However, there was no such thing as a draw in the gift competition, so the two of them were also losers. Losers, Vilot Silensword, 16 Nights in reverse. In this way, both sides could order the other side once. What a pity. I originally wanted to heal myself in the end. I didn't expect to include you in the healing range. Wuming drank a mouthful of wine without blushing. I almost believed you. 16th Night smiled casually and drank the wine in one gulp. The victory condition on the contract was like this. Victory condition: after the time is up, the damage taken will be less. Wuming had implanted healing runes in the shattered ground of the 8th floor. When these healing runes were activated, the effect was to completely heal the two of them. In this way, after the time was up, the two of them would be the ones who didn't receive any damage. Hey, this is completely the same as when I competed with Black Rabbit. 16th Nights was quite depressed. A competition was to determine the winner and loser. Why would it be a draw every day? But this time, 16th Nights was quite happy, so 16th Nights didn't want to pursue Wuming. Here, this is Black Rabbit's command authority. 16th Nights took out a piece of parchment from the gift card and threw it to Wuming. Alright, give me the sovereignty of Leo's Sunday, 16th Night said bluntly as he extended his hand towards Wuming. You guessed it. Wuming took out a ball of light and threw it to 16th Nights. Even an idiot can see that you want to give me the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sunday. That's why you want to compete with me. I'm just curious as to how you lost the sovereignty of the sun to me. Chapter 845. Just like how Wuming sent Ophiuchus constellation Sun Sovereign into Letitia's body, 16 Nights merged the Sun Sovereign into his own body. Indeed, Wuming never thought of using the Sun Sovereign from the start. After knowing that Leo constellation Sun Sovereign could deflect weapons, Wuming's first thought was to reverse 16 Nights. Firstly, 16 Nights was the most suitable for Leo constellation Sun Sovereign, but there was another more important reason. After all, Wuming couldn't stay in the box world forever, but the rest of No Name could. After he left, No Name would have to rely on his companions. Thus, Wuming would leave whatever he could for them. Of course, Wuming also didn't need the Sun Sovereign. You can't be too obsessed with power, but you can't run away from your own power. Wuming's advice to Letitia had the same effect on Wuming. Since the Sun Sovereign couldn't give Wuming more power, it was like a chicken rib, so it was better to give it to the rest of No Name. Thus, Wuming was glad that he didn't fight with 16 knights. If he did, there would have been a winner. In that case, he wouldn't have been able to give 16 knights the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. After all, normal methods couldn't make 16 knights except the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. Wuming had no choice but to use this method to understand the agreement between him and 16 knights. Now you know what method I used. After replying to 16 knights, Wuming drank all the wine in his cup. Although I know, it's a fact that I was tricked by you. It's really annoying. 16 knights smiled proudly. Look, even if he was tricked, 16 knights would still continue to smile. As for the reason, let's make it clear in advance. Next time, you have to fight with me properly. No one is going easy. Use your full strength. 16 Knight's tone was serious. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. It seemed like he was going to fight for real. After all, they had already experienced fighting each other. Next, they would have to fight with real swords and spears. 16 Knights didn't only use his fists to fight, he still had trump cards he hadn't used yet. Forget it. If we really fought like that, Black Rabbit would cry herself dry. Wuming shook his head. One had to know that a real fight was no joke. Wuming and 16 Knights were both strong in the box. If they fought, they would be injured would be light, but they would definitely be heavily injured. Their lives might even be in danger. Although 16 Knights was indeed looking for excitement, the two of them were not mortal enemies. There was no need to fight to the death, right? Previously in the conference room, Black Rabbit was about to cry when he found out that Wuming and 16 Knights were going to fight. If it really came to a real fight like 16 Knights said, Black Rabbit might really cry. Forget it then. We'll talk about it later. 16th Knights, who seemed to have thought of something, also chose to give up. It's about time. We should go out. Wuming realized that the two had been away from No Name for a long time. It was time to go back. Hey. You should have other spaces. Why don't you take me for a walk? 16 Knights said as her eyes lit up. Wuming showed a helpless expression. Because Wuming knew that this was the light of a problem child. No Name's headquarters. Wuming and 16 Knights left the corridor. The two of them seemed to have removed their invisibility and appeared out of thin air. In the end, Wuming didn't take 16 Knights for a walk. After all, if the other two problem children found out about this, they would either have a falling out or pester Wuming all the time. It's really unfair. Since 16 Knights also visited your private space, we have to do the same. At that time, the two of them would probably say something like that. If that's the case, why not refuse from the beginning? That's what Wuming thought. However, 16 Knights began to fuss over this. You're really boring. You were so bold when you were fighting. 16 Knights' expression was as if she encountered something boring. To put it simply, she was quite bored. Didn't I say that Nazalik's enchantment is just a big tomb? There's really nothing to see. Wuming sighed helplessly and tried to persuade her again. As if there was no other way, Wuming used his trump card. If you're really not happy, I can find White Yiksha to fight with you. I don't want to fight White Yiksha now. I still have self-awareness. Although 16 Knights said so, the smile on her face told Wuming that 16 Knights was not afraid of fighting White Yiksha. Wuming didn't care much about it. After thinking for a while, he said to 16 knights. Our flag has returned anyway. Presumably, there will be a lot of gift competitions that you need to participate in. As an organization, the most important thing for a community was its name and flag. The community's name and flag could be used for publicity to make the community more famous and drive the development of the community. In the past, because the flag and name of No Name had been taken away, they could only use the slogan, "Down with the Demon King," to promote themselves. Now that the flag had been recovered, they had to vigorously promote themselves. And the best way to advertise was to win a large number of gift contests. After all, the gift contest was the main theme of the Suitland world. Only by winning the gift contest and showing their strength would the people of the Suitland remember them and be valued by other communities. Only then could they develop themselves. Even if No Name still didn't have a name, as long as the logo on the No Name flag was shown. Of course, it didn't mean that the slogan, "Down with the Demon King," that No Name previously advertised was invalid. It was just a two-pronged approach. That's true. We have to get busy. When it came to the gift competition, 16 knights would become excited. But then, 16 knights looked at Wooming again. You just said you, right? Then what are you going to do? Don't tell me you're going to leave again. 16 knights had a smile on his face, but his eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. As a smart person, when 16 knights first saw Wooming leave, he deduced that Wooming had something he couldn't let go of in the outside world. Wooming wasn't like the three of them. When he was first invited to the boxings, he was already prepared to give up everything in the outside world. Although Wooming said that he came to the boxings because of a letter, after Wooming left the boxings, 16 knights asked Black Rabbit how many letters were sent. The result was naturally 3 letters. In other words, if Wooming didn't lie, the one who used the letter to invite him definitely wasn't Black Rabbit. Of course, it couldn't be said that Wooming was lying to them. After all, Wooming said from the beginning that he came to the boxings to find his body. But this also meant that after finding his body, even if he didn't leave No Name, he wouldn't stay in the boxings for a long time. For now, I won't leave for the time being. Wooming shook his head. No matter what, Wooming came this time to find his original body. No matter what, he had to find his original body first. Also, Wooming looked in the direction of his room. He still hadn't completed that person's request. Chapter 846. No Name, Headquarters, Wooming's room. Vera sat alone on Wooming's bed, quietly waiting outside the window. Gotcha. The door opened, and Vera subconsciously turned her head. It was Wooming. Vera used a bit of strength and jumped from the bed to the ground. She ran to Wooming's side in an extremely cute manner. Welcome back. Vera said as she pulled on Wooming's sleeve. I'm back. But after saying that, Wooming felt that something was wrong. This was supposed to be his room. How did Vera manage to turn the tables on him? But it didn't matter. After laughing at himself, Wooming squatted down and apologized to Wooming. I'm sorry, Vera, for leaving you here alone. Before, when Lily came to find Wooming and told him that everyone else had returned, Wooming first brought Lily and Vera to Pest's room and found Pest, who was still sulking. Then, Wooming brought the 3 of them to his room and found Letitia, who was cleaning the room. After that, Wooming, who had the intention to hold a meeting that belonged to No Name, left Vera, who was not a member of No Name, in his room. Although the meeting just now wasn't that important, and Wooming did agree to let Vera stay by his side, it was still a matter of principle. Wooming bringing the leader of the northern community into his own community was already against the rules in the eyes of ordinary people. He couldn't possibly bring the leader of the northern community into his own community's meeting. It's fine. Regardless of whether Vera understood the depth of Wuming's apology or not, Vera didn't seem to blame Wuming. Finally, Wuming looked at Vera's pair of eyes that were the color of will-o'-the-wisps rather seriously. Then next, let's go settle Maxwell's matter once and for all. After separating from Wuming, 16th Knights returned to the previous conference room. Opening the door, as expected, only Hey Bunny and Ren were in the conference room dealing with matters. Mr. 16th Knights, did you and Mr. Villo finish fighting? In fact, it wasn't like what Wuming said before, that a long time had passed. He and 16th Knights didn't fight for long. In fact, it was just the principle of happy times always pass by quickly. However, it was also because Wuming deliberately shortened the duel time. Although I don't want to admit it, happy times are always short. Shrugging with a smile, 16th Knight walked to her seat at the conference table and sat down. In short, I'm here also came to help. With the return of the no-name flag, not only did they need to participate in the bestowment competition in the future, there were also various miscellaneous matters that needed to be dealt with and prepared in advance. Although Wu Ming did not explicitly point this out, 16 Knights was clear about it, and Ren the Black Rabbit was dealing with these matters. Mr. 16th Knights also came to help. Hey Bunny was a little worried since she was a problem child. She looked at Jiao Fei Niao and Haruai Buyao and left. Hey, Black Rabbit, no matter what, I'm still a smart person. Be careful, or I'll rip your ear off. 16 Knights grinned, looking like he was joking at the same time. Ears can't be. Hey Bunny panicked and covered her ears. That. 16th Knights, come and help. Ren smiled awkwardly and wiped a drop of cold sweat from his forehead. You don't have to take 16th Knight's words seriously, but if you don't take it seriously, then 16th Knights will take it seriously. And there was one more thing to know. Although her fists were fiercer than most of the people in No Name, 16th Knights was indeed smart. I misunderstood Mr. 16th Knights. It's Hey Bunny's fault. Who told you problem children to always do things that annoy people? 16th Knights felt that Hey Bunny's annoyance was actually referring to her ears. Okay, I'll pull your ears if you keep talking. I know. Don't always covet Hey Bunny's ears. Speaking of which. Ren opened his mouth again. Where did Mr. Villo go? 16th Knights picked up a document on the table and answered without looking up. He went to find his body. Leaving this sentence that confused Hey Bunny and Ren, 16th Knights began to work. North District, 54-545 Outer Realm Gate Square. It was already night time. Because the Devil King's attack had already retreated, but after all, the Devil King's attack had just ended, so there were still not many people using the Realm Gate. There were only some community members who came to help Salamandra deal with the aftermath. Among them, there was no lack of community members who belonged to the same class as Salamandra, which was ironic. Black and purple ripples appeared in a corner of the Realm Gate Square. Wu Ming and Vera walked out of the teleportation gate. After all, they had been here once, so Wu Ming's teleportation gate could be used. Let's go, Vera, let's walk around the city. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Vera could not help but tighten her grip on Wu Ming's sleeves, as if she was afraid of being left behind. Don't worry, Vera, as long as that Maxwell guy appears, I will definitely take care of him this time. Vera hesitated, but in the end, she nodded silently. Before coming to the North District, Wu Ming told Vera to be bait to lure Maxwell out, but Vera was 100% unwilling. As a last resort, Wu Ming could only persuade her and repeatedly promise her, as well as entice her by buying snacks. Finally, Vera reluctantly agreed. But there was nothing he could do about it. According to the information he gathered, Maxwell was only interested in Vera, so he could only use Vera as bait. Although it was bait, Wu Ming was not prepared to let the fish eat the bait. But why did Wu Ming choose the 54545 Outer Realm as the location of the operation? Firstly, it was because there was a familiar local snake, Salamandra, so it was easier to get things done. Secondly, Wu Ming was still very worried about the seal of absolute evil. If the enemy's plan was really to release absolute evil, Wu Ming did not think that the other party would give up. Even if there was no key item to lift the seal, Wu Ming did not think that the other party would give up so easily. One must know that the box court was a world full of miracles. Maxwell alone, the 4-digit Demon King, had a resurrection ability that Wu Ming could not understand. He had not found the original body yet, so he was very suspicious of whether the person behind Maxwell and the others had more strange unknown methods. Of course, if Wu Ming overestimated the other party, then it was nothing. He could just treat it as taking Vera shopping. In short, it was always right to be cautious. Immediately, Wu Ming brought Vera to stroll around the city. How did the two of them enter the city? Wu Ming's teleportation door was super useful. Wu Ming was very interested in the city. After all, the last time he came, Wu Ming did not have a good look around. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.